2 tampons may mean my marriage is over. And this one is way worse than you'd ever expect. And let's get into it. I, 29 female, have been with my husband, 30 male, for 7 years. Married for 4. I've never had reason to suspect he was unfaithful to me or even remotely dissatisfied with our marriage. He likes to joke that we're still living the honeymoon phase at nearly 5 years and 2 kids in. I wouldn't have questioned that, or him, were it not for a surprise I found in his car last month. When buckling our daughter into her car seat, I noticed something slotted between the cushions. I pulled it out and saw that it was a tampon. This wouldn't have been so unusual had I not had an IUD that has stopped my period for the past year, and I didn't even recognize the wrapper style. I brought it to my husband's attention, and he didn't seem to understand what it was, let alone why I was holding it, until I told him where I'd found it and why I was almost certain it wasn't mine. He shrugged and said it probably belonged to his coworker, Fiona. It's not uncommon for my husband to carpool to lunch with his coworkers, and we're both fairly close to Fiona and her husband. So I figured it was entirely possible the tampon had slipped out of her purse whenever he had driven with them or offered her a ride. No big deal. I put it out of my mind until we had dinner with Fiona and her husband a couple of weeks later. I had sincerely wanted to believe my husband. I just couldn't get over the way it had been tucked in the seat and how my husband had seemed not to have any regard for it whatsoever. Maybe played dumb. I don't know. I did something that I now feel kind of crazy for doing. I faked an emergency and asked Fiona if she had any tampons while we were out together. She handed me one almost identical to the tampon I'd found in our back seat, and I breathed a sigh of relief. So the tampon there was probably the same tampon here, and in all likelihood, there was an innocent explanation as to why it had been in the back seat in the first place. I thought I had seen the last of the out-of-place feminine hygiene products until I found another tampon this morning, this time in my sock drawer. I feel physically ill at the thought of my husband having an affair, and even more nauseated at the thought that the woman might have left these tampons out for me to find. If it was my husband's coworker, why would she give herself away by offering me one the other night? In any other situation, I would want to talk to my husband about this, but I feel too sick and embarrassed to approach him with what I found. What should I do? And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, I've had a period 30 years and never put a tampon in a sock drawer. Trust your gut and get cameras. And the OP responds and says, neither have I. I've considered so many explanations for the tampons that wouldn't implicate my husband, but none of them make sense really. I'm terrified to set up a camera if it means confirming what I suspect right now. And someone else says, has Fiona been over to your house and had time to plant the tampon? And the OP responds and says, she's been to our house many times and vice versa. To my knowledge, she wasn't over any time in the past week. So if she planted that second tampon, she had to have found a window of time when I wasn't home. Anytime she and her husband visit, we all stay downstairs, and you'd have to go really out of your way to make it to our bedroom, i.e., around our dogs, over the safety gate, past the other bedrooms. Not saying it's impossible, but definitely tricky to do on a quick bathroom break, I would guess. And then someone else says, how old are your kids? Could they have found a tampon and put it in a random place? And the OP responds and says, 2 and 4. Both have a mischievous streak. So I didn't want to rule out the possibility of one of them moving stuff around, but I can't imagine how they would get their hands on one. Possibly 2 random tampons that I never bought. And then we get an update post 18 days later, and let's get into it. The post reads, contemplating every possible source of 2 tampons has been my personal hell for the past 2 weeks, but I wanted to share an update. Shortly after posting on here, I told my sister what had happened: the tampon in the back seat and the sock drawer, my husband's cluelessness, the tampon from Fiona, and all the things I suspected but didn't want to believe. We compared tampons, save for the backseat one I had already discarded, and they were a match, just in different absorbencies. I hadn't left either in a place where my husband or daughters would have found them and moved them around. My daughters didn't know what they were or where they had come from. My sister was convinced it was Fiona, either having intimacy with my husband, effing with me, or both. Direct confrontation of either party still seemed like a bad idea, so she suggested inviting Fiona and her husband over for a Labor Day barbecue. Unfortunately, they already had plans. My sister and I agreed that it was too soon for cameras without any other evidence, so it was just a waiting game from there. Watching my husband for any changed behavior, there was none. Our house for any misplaced/foreign items, there were none. And even the girls for any new friends they might have met. My sister's husband was adamant on the last point, and partly why he was inclined to believe that the tampons were harmless. If anything had been happening in or around our home, he said it would be nearly impossible to keep it from me and the girls, since my husband was the one taking them to and from daycare and most other activities during the week. I felt a good bit of consolation from that. It wasn't until my youngest daughter, 2 years old, came down with something last week that I felt any differently. I wanted to be the one home taking care of her, but my husband insisted that I stay at work while he stayed home with her. I was okay with that. My sister and her husband figured it was a good sign that he would take the time off at a moment's notice, and at that point, we were all already beginning to put the tampon fiasco behind us. By the third or fourth day, I was just happy to see a near healthy child and a husband who was helping see her through it. Toward the end of the week, though, I came home to something strange. The toddler that I'd left that morning in an old PJ set was now dressed in a onesie I had never seen before, with a tiny clip in her hair. I can't say I have the sharpest memory, but I have a pretty good sense of what my kids wear on a day-to-day basis, and particularly what kinds of clothes they wear. I'd sworn off the full-length sleep suits with snaps across the front long before we'd even had our second. The long snaps are just a pain in the ass and a no-go for efficient diaper changes, in my opinion. It's just not something I would dress her in. And my husband knows as much. He doesn't plan for or buy the girls' clothes, and he certainly doesn't accessorize them. So I was bewildered and kind of floored at the thought of someone around our sick child without my knowledge. I didn't think twice, and I went straight to my husband to ask if anyone had been over to see him or the girls. He seemed confused, like before, and asked me why I would think that. It had just been him and the kids all day long. I asked him again if someone had so much as stopped by to say hello, and he denied it. He told me to calm down. I might have lashed out and come forward with the accusations right then and there, but our older daughter was in the room, and she sensed something was up. In a calmer voice, I asked him a third time if anyone had been around our children, and my husband swore that the girls hadn't been around anyone but him. He also denied buying new clothes or doing anyone's hair. With our daughter in the room and my emotions all over the place, I decided to leave it. I couldn't make sense of it then, and it hardly seems clearer now, after I've driven myself half crazy with explanations that aren't adding up. And the OP adds some more context in the comments, and let's get into it. The OP says, to answer a couple of questions, my 2-year-old can only string together a couple of words at a time, and when I ask her about her time with daddy, or her clothes/bow, she answers based on the cues I give her. Example, who gave you that pretty bow? And she repeats pretty bow back to me, or mama/daddy over and over. My older daughter, almost 4, was at daycare that morning, and she can't recall anything different from that day. Doesn't remember the PJ change or the hair clip, so my guess is she was changed sometime that morning, but I'm not totally sure. I have a 45-minute commute to work, so stopping by for lunch isn't really feasible. My sister has been kind enough to leave work and drive past a few times here and there, and she hasn't seen anything out of the ordinary. We have a Ring camera at the front door, and I have got the app on my phone with notifications on. Nothing there yet. If anyone has recommendations for more discreet surveillance, I would be open to it. I'm just the least tech-savvy person and worry another camera will be easy to detect. And yes, we get our carbon monoxide detectors tested regularly. And now let's get into some other comments. One user says, is it possible one of her hair clips came from daycare? And the OP responds and says, I could see the hair clip being a possibility, but less likely on the onesie. My younger daughter hasn't been to daycare in days, and if either of them had returned with something like that before, I would have noticed, especially since it was the kind of onesie I hate with a passion, lol. And some people comment that they can't wait to find out the ending to this saga, and the OP responds and says, my money's on the Hollywood horror ending. Hopefully dreamed up the dogs too, so I can finally stop picking up their imaginary shits and whatnot. And then we get an update 16 days later. And let's get into the update. It reads, after nearly losing my mind over a hair clip and a onesie, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere with the accusations and half-baked guesswork. I'd gotten so absorbed in the paranoia and misery of my situation that I wasn't sleeping, eating, or caring for my kids the way I should have been, and I wasn't getting any answers. So I decided to finally buy the cameras and have them shipped to my sister's house, with my brother-in-law agreeing to help with the install/setup over at mine. Before the cameras were ever delivered though, I got my long-awaited confirmation last week. A Ring notification had alerted me to motion at the front door while I was at work. Half expecting to see a delivery person, pet, or lawn care salesman for the 15th time, you can only imagine my surprise when I saw a clip of a young woman leading my daughter into the house hand in hand, with my husband and other daughter close behind them. The girls were supposed to be in daycare and my husband at work. The woman, as far as I knew, was living 2 states away with a court order keeping her there. I immediately called my husband to ask him what was this woman doing in our house. He didn't answer, so I texted it to him. Even in his stupidity, he probably realized he had messed up by going through the front door, knew I had gotten the Ring notification, and wanted to delay the inevitable. By the 5th or 6th subsequent call, though, he did pick up. The woman on the camera was my husband's sister. As I would come to find out later, she was the likely source of both tampons, the onesie, and the bow. She is also a registered SO and a recovering addict who spent the better part of her adolescence and young adulthood coercing the silence of another one of my husband's family members after she had violated them. I hadn't seen or heard from her in years, and from the way my husband talked about her, I didn't expect I ever would. But here she was in our house with our children. Suffice to say, I was livid. It wasn't an affair at all, and still somehow infinitely more disgusting knowing who it was and why all of this has been happening. Apparently, my sister-in-law, fresh off another stint in rehab, had wanted to reconnect and make amends with people she'd hurt. And my husband was high on that list. My husband didn't want me to know, or worse, try and keep her family, our children, away from her. So they'd been meeting in secret, often at our house while I was at work. They would enter through the garage in my husband's car, so the Ring camera at the front door wouldn't tip me off. She spent the night on a weekend I had been on a business trip and slept in our bed. She babysat our girls on a night my husband told me he had dropped them off at his parents'. She bought the girls' clothes and dressed my youngest in the onesie and bow that my husband had promised on his life I had dressed her myself. My husband swore this was all in my head. The tampons, the onesie, the bow, and all the rest. He was perfectly content to watch me agonize for weeks over a woman he insisted did not exist, shrugging off each progressively more unsettling discovery like it was news to him and telling me I was being irrational. He insinuated that I was experiencing postpartum depression, 2 years after I'd given birth. 4 years after I told them that one of my biggest fears for motherhood was to suffer PPD like my mother had with me, to not be fully present for our babies and be left with a world of guilt and regret as they grew older. He told me I wasn't sleeping enough, that I missed the girls too much, that I needed to take a step back and reevaluate the state of my mental health. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was my husband, and because no other version of events made sense. Now, after a month of this, I have nothing to show for my trust but this pathetic situation and a lot of anger. And the top comment says, call the cops and a lawyer. And the OP says, already on it. Believe me, we are going scorched earth on this guy. And this is the last we have ever heard from the OP. And oh my God, what a horrifying twist. I mean, I was expecting an affair to come to light. I'm sure you were expecting an affair to come to light, but it turned out to be the OP's husband's sister, who was a registered S offender and someone who went to prison for violating one of her own family members and also a recovering addict. Wow, that was a twist I was not expecting, and just gross and disturbing, and it's honestly scary that the OP's, I assume now, ex-husband would put his kids in a situation like that. You know what I mean? Like, why would you ever trust your sister, who's a registered S offender? Why would you put them with your kids, who already has a track record of violating their own family members? God, this was just so disturbing, and I feel so bad for the OP and the OP's kids. I mean, this situation is horrible. But let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, I hope the dad isn't trying to get custody. OP's lawyer is going to have a field day with the fact he brought a S offender in contact with his children. And someone says, not even just bringing a S offender around the kids, leaving the kids alone with an offender. And someone replies and says, there are no words for how horrifying this is. Every parent's worst nightmare. And they couldn't have said it better. This truly is every parent's worst nightmare. I mean, someone you thought you trusted, someone you loved, someone who swore up and down that they weren't lying to you, and then to soon find out that they were lying to you. And it's infinitely worse than you could ever imagine. And we just have to hope that the OP's husband's sister, I hate to say it, I hope she didn't do anything to the OP's kids. Like, they left, or he left her alone with his kids. And she has a track record of violating her family members, and God, I don't even want to think about that. Like, hopefully the OP's kids aren't traumatized, or hopefully they weren't violated, because, I mean, this situation is already horrible. But unfortunately, that's a possibility. I hate to say it, but that's just all speculation. But like that commenter said, the husband left his sister alone with the kids. And God, such a horrifying Reddit thread. And like I said, this is the last we have ever heard from the OP. So we have no idea what happened, how the divorce went, or what happened, or if the OP's husband's sister went back to prison, or who knows. But God, let me know your thoughts on this down below, because yeah, I would love to hear what you guys have to think. But on to the next one. OP's girlfriend shot him. The first post being titled, "My girlfriend pointed a gun at me and I can't stop thinking about it. I've been with her for nearly 4 years, and despite all the arguments we've had, there was never a single violent moment. That's probably why I was so shocked when she did it. I've been having trouble sleeping, and whenever I see her, I basically freeze up. She has apologized, and I told her I forgive her, of which I do. I really love her, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just overthinking, but what if next time she doesn't hesitate? I know Reddit really isn't the right place to say this, but I know if I tell my mom, she'll tell me to leave her, and I don't want that to happen. Sorry if this wasn't worded properly. My hands are shaking, and I can't think straight. Let me clarify things. I actually want to still be with her, and I don't plan on leaving. She's a really beautiful soul who has helped me through so much, including the traumatic experiences with my dad. She was with me all the steps of the way through therapy, and she helped heal me. She's literally my source of happiness. I should have started off by saying this. Maybe you'll change your opinion. Plus, the majority of comments are from men telling me to leave, but the women have different opinions. I feel this is just a rough patch that most couples go through. It's my first and only relationship, so I'm not really experienced. But I feel the women here would be in a better position to tell me the next step to take, since they've probably been in my girlfriend's shoes at least once. No disrespect to my fellow men. You all are great too. Edit. My girlfriend just saw the post and she texted me asking if it was me. I'm going over to her place now and we are going to work things out. I'm not giving up on her just yet. I'll make an update in about an hour when we are done working things out. Thank you all for the support and encouragement. I actually felt better putting this out there. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "Dude, do you realize how this sounds? Would it be better if the next time she actually shoots you?" And the OP replies and says, "I know her and I know she won't do it again. I just need to find out a way to forget it happened." And another commenter says, "I'm sorry, but I think you are in an abusive relationship. Pointing a gun at someone is not a mistake. It is a deliberate threat on your life. I would do two things. Number one, think about whether or not this is the only incident where you felt scared or trapped by her actions. Does she tell you who you can be friends with or not? Does she try to control your relationship with your family? Number two, take a little bit of time and read several other threads on Reddit of people posting about their significant others abusing them, and see if the way you are reacting is comparable. The bottom line here is that this will not be a one-time occurrence, and next time, she's probably going to shoot you. Good luck." And the OP responds and says, "It's not abusive. Everyone is blowing it out of proportion. It was just a one-time incident." And guess what? The OP comes back one day later with an update titled, "My girlfriend shot me after I broke up with her." The update reads, "I am currently in the hospital now, and I've gotten the mental clarity needed to see just how foolish I was. If not for the fact that I had friends here in Texas, I would have been dead. I'm just lucky to be alive." This is an update from the previous post. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "Please tell me she is facing legal consequences." And the OP says, "No, I don't think she will. That will be up to the prosecutor. I won't be pressing charges." And then the OP also says, "If I do, then I will go to jail as well. There's no way she won't bring me down as well." And that makes me think, did the OP do anything drastic before the OP's girlfriend shot him? I mean, like, why would you not press charges? And why would you go to jail as well if you are completely innocent? So that makes me wonder, did the OP do anything, that warranted being shot? Like possibly, making her feel threatened or whatever? I don't know. That is, that's concerning. But then someone actually responds and says, "The fuck did you do that you'd go to jail for her literally shooting you? Bruh." And basically everyone says, please press charges, and people want the OP to elaborate. And yeah, this is a wild thread. And someone else says, so based off your comments, it sounds like there is way more to the story. You say you'll go to jail to do was she protecting herself. We clearly aren't getting the whole story. No one is just totally cool with being shot, not wanting the person to get consequences. And then the OP gives us an update the day after, and it reads as follows. The OP says, I grew up in a terrible household. My dad would come home drunk and beat up my mom for sport. I have never been so scared of anyone like that in my life. He made me watch and told me that's how a man does it. Some nights I'll stay awake hearing my mom cry as he R-words her. He never allowed me to go out, and my mom was the only one who homeschooled me to the best of her abilities. Sadly, my dad passed away due to some medical reasons, and I was finally able to go out now that he is gone. That was when I realized just how damaged I was. I had extreme social anxiety, and I didn't have any degree. I started doing some work for money, and that was when I met my ex. My mom started becoming a bit violent after my dad passed away because of the burden of providing for the family. So I stayed with my ex. She helped me overcome my anxiety. She paid for courses online and put me through anything I didn't understand. She bought books for me on how to read and gave me an education. She bought me my first phone and taught me how to use social media. Without her, I wouldn't even be able to type this. She told me every day that I meant something, that I am loved, and I am capable of doing so much more, and I shouldn't be limited to anything my dad said I was. She told me that as long as I have her, nothing bad will ever happen to me. Some of you grew up in fancy lifestyles, so you won't understand. This girl loves me. I just know it. I'll admit I don't know why she did what she did, but I just can't let go of everything she has done for me. I'll keep listing everything she did for me until y'all understand. And wow, what a disturbing Reddit thread. And this is the last post we have ever received from the OP. So we have no idea whether or not he pressed charges, whether or not his ex-girlfriend, as he refers to her in this last update, went to jail, or what happened. But this is really, really disturbing. And we don't know what prompted the OP's ex-girlfriend to shoot him, because it clearly seems that way, that he provoked her in some way, because, you know, he's like, I would go to jail too. If I press charges, she's going to bring me down as well. And so who knows what happened? I mean, I really wish we had an update on this, but, you know, we just have to wish for the best for the OP. He clearly was going through some stuff, and he's clearly in a bad mental situation, and just, you know, his life is in mess right now. I mean, he just got shot. And so hopefully he was able to recover, and hopefully he was able to realize that this girlfriend of his, or ex-girlfriend, is completely abusive, or maybe the OP was abusive. I mean, like he said, he'd go to jail too. I don't know. There's a lot of things we can think about and theorize about, but like I said, that's all theorizing. Nothing substantiated on if he did anything to her. But I just want to hear what you guys have to think. I mean, this was a extremely disturbing post, but yeah, wow. On to the next one. My stepdaughter died 4 weeks ago, and I caught my husband and his ex-wife in our bed. My stepdaughter, Becca, who was a teenager, died 4 weeks ago. I have been in her life since she was very young. We were extremely close. My husband, Derek, 40 male, his ex-wife, Sam, 38 female, and I, 35 female, get along very well. There has never been an issue in the 7 years that I've been with Derek. Sam has always been kind to me. She didn't even care that Becca called me mom too. Right after Becca's passing, Sam had so much anxiety and depression that she was unable to be by herself. She has no family besides us, so we invited her to stay with us. Sam hardly leaves the house. She mostly just sleeps in Becca's room, which is completely understandable. I always tell her that I'm here if she needs me, and that I want her to take time with grieving, and that there is no pressure to go back to her home. Today, I needed to run some errands, So I asked Sam if she'd like to join me to get out of the house a little bit. But she declined and said she'd rather just stay at home and sleep. I told Derek that I was leaving and that I would be back in 2-ish hours. He works from home. I also told him to check on Sam every once in a while and maybe try getting her to eat something. After stopping at the post office, I realized I forgot my library book that I needed to return. So I went back home to get it. As soon as I walked in the door, I heard moaning coming from mine and Derek's bedroom. I immediately knew what was happening, and my heart completely broke in that moment. I wasn't completely sure what to do, but I ended up deciding to confront them. So I walked to the bedroom and opened the door and began yelling at them both. Sam started having an anxiety attack and ran to the bathroom while Derek kept apologizing profusely. I asked him what the hell was happening. He told me that he made himself and Sam some lunch and they began talking about Becca and shared some memories. And then Sam ended up kissing him and he didn't pull back. And then it ended with them in our bed. They're begging me to understand that it was just grief that caused them to become intimate and that they both made a mistake. I don't know what to do. I love this man and I love Sam. I am heartbroken that they did this to me and put me in this position. I feel so stuck. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "That would be a hard no for me. I understand grieving, but how is this excusing cheating? What happens next time he is sad?" Edit. I misspoke when I said sad. Obviously, this is something beyond devastating. I still don't think it can be used as an excuse. And the OP responded and said, "I don't want to excuse his cheating. I think I want to divorce him. But I'm anxious about doing it right after we lost Becca." Another user says, "Probably together. Do you both own the home? If it's in your name, change the locks. Stay strong and don't listen to his excuses. I'm so sorry this happened to you during such a difficult time." And the OP responded and said, "Exactly what I was thinking if I'm being honest. And yes, we both own it. When I told him to leave, he kept saying sorry and then said that he would leave and respect me wanting him gone for a while." Another user says, "Are you seeing a therapist perhaps? You're dealing with a lot right now. It might be useful." And the OP responded and said, "Yes, I am in therapy. I've been with my therapist for other things for the last 3 years. She has been very helpful. I saw her yesterday and was able to figure some things out." And then we get an update the next day, and it says, "I posted an update to r/true off my chest, but didn't realize there was an update rule, so it was removed. I figured I'd post an update to my profile for those that follow me. I decided that I am going to file for a divorce. I can't ever trust Derek again. It sucks because we had an amazing relationship, I thought. He's always been great, so this was a complete shock to me. Last night, Derek came over to talk. He confessed to a lot. Turns out it wasn't their first time having intimacy like most people thought. They've been having intimacy since 3 months before Becca died. I am completely shocked and heartbroken. Sam also reached out last night and thanked me for everything I've done for her and told me she was sorry. I didn't respond. I blocked her. I did so much for Sam and considered her a friend, so this hurts a lot, more than I can handle. This is all too much. As hard as this is going to be, I need to leave Derek and cut them both out of my life. I am ready to do so. I am done. Also, some people are saying I deserve this because I should have known better than to let Sam into our home around Derek, but you need to understand that I'm a giving person. I trust people more than I should. I truly thought Sam was an amazing person. I know it's unusual to become friends with your husband's ex-wife, but it's just how it went for us, and I shouldn't be blamed for what happened. Thank you to everyone who commented nice things and for the kind messages. You've all been helpful during this insanely difficult time. I appreciate it. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, out of curiosity, what are his excuses for cheating? Those two are going to be in a world of hurt once the guilt settles in. They are going to be asking themselves why it had to be Becca, and will eventually come to the conclusion that it's their punishment for what they've done to you. I can pretty much guarantee you that. And the OP responds and says, he told me that they just accidentally reconnected one night when I was away at my mom's. He was stressed we weren't conceiving and were having miscarriages. So he then vented to Sam. And then somehow that led to intimacy. It seems so icky to me. How can you vent about our struggles like that and then go and have intimacy with Sam? It's just awful of him. I don't understand it. And another user says, I'm so sorry. You did nothing to deserve this. Not now and not 3 months ago when it all started. I thought that this wasn't the first time, but 3 months is terrible. I will never understand the reasoning behind a person who cheats. I thought I saw you comment that your mom is coming to be with you. I hope she just gives you the biggest hug. You just need people who love you to be around you right now. I'm so sorry that you lost Becca. And now you don't even have Derek to grieve with. It's all just a horrible thing. I really hope you can find a good lawyer to help you with everything, so that at least that piece is something you can see progress in. And the OP responds and says, thank you so much. I'm so glad my mom is able to stay with me for a while. And I have lots of friends that have been coming by to check in on me too. All this sucks, but it's definitely shown me that I'm cared for and loved. And then the OP gives us an update 2 days later, and let's get into it. It reads, I'm getting lots of questions about some things, so I figured I'd answer a few of them. Have I told anyone about what happened besides my mom? Yes, I told a few friends and some family members. Most of them are supportive of my decision and aren't speaking to Derek. Where is Derek staying? Currently, he's staying at a hotel. Our friends refuse to let him stay with him. He's lost a lot of people due to his awful decisions. Has he tried fighting me on getting a divorce? Yes, he begged me not to file for divorce. But when I told him I needed him to just let me go, and that I was just too exhausted to fight him on this, he let it be and agreed to get in a divorce. Why isn't Derek staying with Sam? He told me he didn't want to continue to hurt me. So he told Sam he was done with her for good, and that they have no reason to speak to each other anymore. I have no idea if that'll last and if they'll just end up together. But I truly don't care what they do anymore. I just want peace. What was Derek's excuse for cheating? He told me that they just accidentally reconnected one night when I was away at my mom's. He was stressed we weren't conceiving and were having miscarriages. So he vented to Sam. And then somehow that led to intimacy. Disgusting of them both. I know. Feel free to ask anything else, and I'll try to answer. Thank you everyone for your support and advice. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Some people ask the OP on what happened to Becca, and OP says, it was very sudden. She died in a car accident when she was with one of her friends and her friend's parents. And then some people ask the OP on her husband's parents being supportive or not, and if they know about his cheating. And the OP responds and says, I get along with Derek's mom very well, but he's also a mama's boy, so it's kind of complicated. She will always be there for him. He'd stay with her if she didn't live across the country. She knows what he did and told me she had a talk with him, but said that he's still her son and she'd help him with anything if he needed it. I'm thinking I need to cut her out of my life too, which makes me really sad because we are close and talked on the phone almost daily. And then some people ask the OP on if she has children with her husband. And the OP says, we have had 6 miscarriages total. All of them were in the first trimester. And then the OP gives us some more updates, and let's get into it. The post reads, I just found out that he is staying with Sam and not at a hotel. He told me it's too expensive to stay at a hotel, and Sam is the only one that'll help him right now. I had a weird feeling this would happen. Just knowing that they are still probably sleeping together hurts my heart. I talked to a lawyer this morning, and we are proceeding with the divorce, and Derek agreed to it. It's actually happening, and I feel some relief that he's not fighting me on this. My mom leaves on Sunday. I'm scared to be alone, but I go back to work on Monday, so I'm hoping it'll be a good distraction. I'll keep updating if anything else happens. Thank you, everyone. I am so grateful for you all. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, OP, how did you find out he was staying at his ex's wife's place? Anything he says should be taken with a grain of salt. He is not true to his words and going on contact with Sam. And the OP responds and says, he texted me this morning after we talked to lawyers and said he just wants to be honest with me. I told him to stop giving me updates on what he's doing in his life, and that is not something I need to know. It seems like he wanted to tell me to hurt me. And then someone asked the OP on how she is doing, and the OP responds and says, thank you. I'm doing a little better today. My mom and I went on some nature walks and went out into the garden this afternoon. That helped. Becca loved gardening with me, so it made me feel closer to her. And then we get another post the next day titled Becca's Diary. And this reads, I decided to go through some of Becca's stuff today. I just found her diary in a box in the back of her closet. Would it be wrong to read some of it? I feel like it would help me feel closer to her, but part of me feels like it's wrong too. I haven't told Derek that I found it either, and I'm unsure if I should tell him. What would you do? And now let's get into some of the top comments. One person asked the OP on if she was closer with Becca prior to her sudden passing, and the OP says, Becca and I were very close. It felt like she told me anything and everything. But I honestly think all parents feel that way about their kids, so I'm kind of nervous to read it. And then we get another update 4 days later, and let's get into it. It reads, I figured it's been a few days, so I should give a little update. My mom is leaving in a couple of hours, so I'll be alone. I'm kind of nervous about it. She helped me stay distracted and kept me going. I don't know how I'm going to handle her being gone. I go back to work tomorrow. First day back since Becca passed away. I'm looking forward to it though because it'll keep me distracted. Also, I did read some of Becca's diary. It made me love her even more. She was such a sweetheart. I went back a few months and saw that she noticed some weird behavior between Derek and Sam. Didn't mention that she knew of the affair, but she just wrote that she thought it was kind of strange that they all three would hang out more than usual, without me. I might read more, but so far, I haven't found anything that's disturbing. Just her being a teenager and talking about crushes, fights with friends, happy family memories, etc. Tomorrow, I'm also talking to my lawyer, so I might have more updates on that. Thanks for the continuous love and support, everyone. And then the OP comes back a week later with an update titled Last Update for a While, and let's get into it. The post reads, I started randomly getting a lot more messages/comments, so I figured I'd do another little last update. My first week back at work went great. I wasn't expecting it to go so well, but thankfully it did. My coworkers were so helpful and patient with me. On Friday night, I decided I didn't want to stay home all weekend alone, so I decided to drive up to my mom's. It helps I have a 3-day weekend so I can spend more time with her. I'm heading back home tomorrow. Also, for those of you that have messaged me hateful things for reading Becca's diary, I just have to say, you aren't in my shoes right now. Telling me I'm a bad mom because I'm reading her diary is just ridiculous. I learned so much more about her, about how caring and sweet she is, and it made me love her even more. It's how I'm able to feel so close to her right now. So please, don't tell me I'm a bad parent for just trying to get by one of the hardest times of my life. You have no idea what it's like. I don't have much of an update, so this will be it. I'll come back and update once the divorce happens, though. Thank you to those of you that have nothing but kind and helpful. You helped me feel less alone. I will forever be grateful. And then the OP comes back 5 days later with a post titled, Sam saw my Reddit post and is threatening to sue me. The post reads, Sam made a fake Facebook profile to message me and tell me she wants to sue me for telling strangers about what happened. Derek supports her, apparently. I don't need this. Am I not allowed to vent about my life to people online? I just want life to get better. I am so tired. F you, Sam. F you, Derek. Edit, Sam is in the comments and messaged me on here too. I blocked her. And now let's get into the top comments on this. One user says, she can if she wants to, but overall, why is she so upset for a problem she single-handedly started by deciding to sleep with the same man who was already in a relationship? In a married relationship. Whatever she does, she should think things through so she doesn't F up just like she did when she thought she could get away with sleeping with Derek. As for Derek, he is supporting her for the same reason he turned to Sam for help, a place to live and a woman to use. Sam and Derek deserve each other. They were both toxic to begin with and overall just disgusting. Sam, Derek, if you see this, and I really hope you guys can see this so you guys can get the effing point of all of this through those thick heads of yours, Becca would have been very disappointed in your actions for going behind her and OP's back for months. I'ma just leave it at that because I don't want to risk getting my account banned for something I know I won't regret saying. OP, I do hope you are finding a way through this and venting to strangers, and this is a normal writing it down or talking to a friend about it. I hope you're on your path to finding peace through this. And then the OP adds some additional information, and the OP says, I just ignored her. It might be an empty threat just to make my life feel harder, but I'm unsure. This is in reference to the message that Sam sent her, and the OP says her message said, quote, so I was scrolling TikTok and ended up on an account where they read Reddit posts, and guess whose post they read? Yours. First you tell your friends and family, and then you go to a bunch of strangers and tell them our life story. I can't believe you. It isn't just your business to tell. Becca would be so disappointed in you. Be prepared because I think I'm going to be suing you for this. This was no one else's business. You did this to yourself. Remember that. I'm actually baffled. She thinks Becca would be disappointed in me. WTF. And then we don't hear from the OP for a little over a week, about 10 days. But 10 days later, the OP comes back with a heavy, sad update. It's titled, I don't think I can do this anymore. The post reads, I have been as strong as I can, but I have been really struggling. So much is going on and I'm just so tired. How can I keep going? I just want to be with Becca. I miss her. I miss her smile. I miss her laugh. I miss how she tried to make you laugh when you were sad by telling dad jokes. I miss how she liked being in the garden with me. I miss seeing all her new drawings. I miss her beautiful eyes. I miss everything about her. I just want her back. I need her back. Edit. I am okay. I just needed a space to vent. I was getting so many messages asking if I'm all right, and I just wanted to say thank you to those that reached out. I am okay. I will be okay. Some days are harder than others, but I think I'll get through this. I am so grateful for the little community I have here. Thank you all so much. And then we get an update 1.5 months later, and this one is titled, Sam committed S-word on June 20th, 2024. The post reads, Sam ended up committing S-word on June 20th. I am still trying to process everything. She had hurt me deeply, but this isn't something I wanted whatsoever. And Derek blames me. I feel so many things and I'm going to be away for a while again, but I wanted to update you all. Thanks for the love, everyone. And then someone asked the OP on how she is doing after Becca's death, and now Sam's passing, and the OP says, I hope they're together again, and I hope they are both at peace too. That's all I hope for. Thank you. And then the OP posts 5 days later, titled Taking a Break from Reddit and Going on a Trip in a Week. This one reads, well, I'm doing it. I'm taking the advice that so many of you had. I'm going on a trip since my job doesn't need me till the middle of August. I was so lucky I had my mom come stay with me a lot, and had my best friend come stay with me when my mom couldn't. But I felt like I was asking too much of them. So I decided that maybe traveling might actually be a good idea. In a week, I'm going to Norway. Becca and I always wanted to go there one day. It was on our bucket list. I'm actually excited. I'm also thinking of getting a pet when I come back, but might wait till the move. Thank you to those that recommended I do this. Becca would be happy I'm doing this. She'd be so thrilled for me. You probably won't hear me for a while. I am taking a long break from Reddit and all my social media. I think it's best for me, but just know I love and appreciate all of you that have been there for me. I would have been so lost without some of you. Yours truly, Alyssa. And then we get an update 3 months later, and let's get into it. It reads, hi everyone. I haven't been on here in so long. I got so many messages asking me to do an update, so here it is. Norway was absolutely breathtaking. I had so much fun and met some amazing people while I was there. I plan on returning in the future for sure. A couple of weeks ago was the 6-month anniversary of Becca's death. It's been hard, but it's getting easier to live everyday life. But it also pains me to say that because I feel guilty for moving on and healing. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe it does to those who have also lost someone close. I moved out of Derek and my house a month ago and got myself a cozy little house all to myself. And oh yeah, I got a dog. His name is Charlie, and he's a darling little Cavalier Spaniel. He's been great. I absolutely love him. Also, I am officially divorced as of last week. It was a very easy divorce, and I'm so happy about that. But Derek didn't want any of Becca's things when we tried figuring out who gets what. He left it all to me. I tried hard to get him to take something because I feel like he will regret it, but he said he didn't want anything, so I have all of Becca's stuff. I have no idea why he didn't want anything, but I have it all in the guest bedroom right now. I'm trying to figure out what to do with everything. Derek is apparently an alcoholic now and quit his job. He seems to be doing terrible. Besides all of that, I don't know if I have anything else to share. I just want to say thank you again to all of my supporters. I have made some friends on here, and I am so thankful for you all. I appreciate every one of you. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, Alyssa, I think of you often and check back periodically for an update. I'm so happy to hear that your trip went well. Equally exciting to hear that you've moved on with your life. Have a new house and a dog. Becca's things belong with you. You will know how best to honor her. Wishing you the best life has to offer. Thank you so much for letting us know how you're doing. And then another user says, I've thought about this OP every now and then since her first update, and Jesus Christ. It's just heartbreak all the way down. And someone else says, I really hope the OP is seeing a good therapist. No one should feel guilty for moving on and healing from a tragedy. And this was the last post we have ever received from the OP, and this was about 2 years ago, so I really don't think we'll ever hear from the OP ever again, but I hope the OP has since been able to, recover and move on, but also remember Becca fondly. And I really do wonder what ended up happening with her ex-husband. I wonder what happened to him, but yeah, like that last commenter said, extremely heartbreaking situation and just horrible. OP suspects that her dad might be a predator. I think my dad might be a predator. I don't have concrete proof for this, and I haven't told anyone about my suspicions either. Maybe I'm just going crazy, but I can't keep this to myself any longer. I usually live with my mom, but she had to temporarily move in with my grandparents because of Grandpa's health. I've been staying with my dad since last month. I actually don't really know him, and he's kind of an a-hole. He lives with my aunt and my cousins. I don't really know them either, and my cousins are all younger than me, so we don't really spend time together. I noticed that my dad treats my male cousin very differently than he treats my female cousins. He pretty much only pays attention to him and doesn't seem interested in interacting with the girls. It might just be because he's a boy. But I noticed that most of their interactions involved touching of some sort, and that my dad almost always initiated it. I also caught him watching my cousin on multiple occasions, which isn't anything weird, but the look on his face was making me a bit uncomfortable. My cousin often wants my dad to play in his room with him, and they usually always close the door. A few days ago, I was walking past my cousin's room and heard my dad telling my cousin that he would show him something soon, but that he has to promise not to tell anyone. The way he was saying it just gave me the ick. I really want to tell my aunt about this, but I've only been here for a little over a month. What if that's just how they normally interact and there's nothing bad going on? Maybe I'm just reading everything wrong, but I'm just getting a bad vibe about it. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, well, how old is your cousin? And the OP responds and says, he's very, very young, and his sisters are equally young, and I am a teenager. And then we get an update 2 days later that's titled, My Dad is a Predator. And let's get into it. Hey everyone, I made a post on Sunday evening about my dad's strange behavior towards my young cousin. After I got home from school on Monday, I called my mom and told her everything I had noticed. She asked to speak to my aunt. I don't know the details of that conversation, but they talked for almost an hour. Afterwards, my aunt just handed me back my phone and went upstairs. I didn't follow her, but she came down about half an hour later with my cousins. He was crying uncontrollably, and she looked close to tears as well. She sat him down on the couch and asked if I could watch him. She went upstairs again while I tried to calm down my cousin. She came back with my dad's laptop and a box. Then she called the police. When my dad came home from work, they arrested him. They confiscated a few more things and asked us to give us our statements. We went to the station this morning to give a more detailed statement. There was a social worker who tried to speak to my cousin, but he refused to talk to her. He hasn't said anything at all since yesterday, and my aunt has been discussing different therapist options with the social worker. I think the worst part about this whole situation is that my aunt and my mom already knew what my dad was like. When we got home, I asked my aunt how she found the evidence in my dad's room so fast, and she confessed that she'd known he had it all along, but he had promised her to stay away from her children. I also called my mom again to give her an update, and she said she found the pictures on my dad's laptop shortly after I was born, which is the reason they broke up. On the bright side, my grandpa is doing much better, so she and I can move back home soon. And this is the last update we have ever heard from the OP. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, I'm baffled. Both aunt and her mom knew he was a predator and thought somehow their kids were still safe with the guy. Like, of course he won't say he will do damage to his niece or nephew. I bet if someone asked him if he was a predator, he would say no to that too. Did they seriously expect him to be trustworthy? Sheesh. And then someone responds and says, because it's an ignorable problem as long as it doesn't affect them. Notice how fast they acted the minute it did in fact start to affect them. And someone else says, those parents are an absolute disgrace. I know my reactions are strong as a survivor, but that father is just filth. That poor kid. The adults failed them. And someone else says, my father was a predator. My mother knew that going into marriage and having kids with him. Just like this mother and aunt. She hid it and let others suffer. They deserve the same punishment as him. Am I the asshole for yelling at and ignoring my girlfriend over a prank? I've 22 male, been with Nicole, 25 female, for a couple of years now. And she's always liked survival stuff and weaponry and all that. I absolutely don't. Really, really bad experiences with knives when I was younger, and Nicole knows about them. We both love Halloween and usually throw a party and dress up and goof around, cook up pumpkin seeds and watch movies. Anyway, the point is Nicole loves doing tricks with her knives, like 5-finger fillet, flicking it open and closed, twirling it, etc. And she'll do it when we're watching a show or movie together, forgetting that I've asked her, please not to. Or she'll buy a new one and show it off, asking if I wanted to give it first bite, and pout when I say no. 2 days ago, she was playing with it again, and I asked her why she keeps forgetting, and she said, "Wow, okay, don't insult my intelligence again." And then that it was just a knife and therefore not a big deal and therefore not that important to remember. After that, she put away the knife and we continued to have an okay night. But I was on edge and jumpy whenever she touched me. Yesterday, she called me into the kitchen. Only she was playing 5-finger fillet, and I startled her and she messed up. Badly. I lost my cool, screamed my head off, tried shouting what I knew about first aid at her while I raced to grab my phone, complete panic, dialing 911, only for her to start laughing and show me that it was a prank involving red food dye and a carrot. She had a nice laugh about how I would have known it was a joke if I wasn't so squeamish about knives, that it's proof I need to get more comfortable, that anyone with passing knowledge knows that it doesn't look like that when something like that happens. She kept explaining how she did it, how she practiced, how she could show me, but I didn't even answer her. It was like my head was underwater and my heart was beating out of my chest. Just moved on autopilot and grabbed my keys and drove a few blocks away before pulling over to breathe. Nicole tried to call me, and the first thing I said was, it wasn't funny at all. And she asked, "Are you crying?" Then I hung up on her. She kept texting me, saying she was sorry, that she didn't think I'd react so badly to a joke, that it just meant to be a good fun in the Halloween spirit. I ignored her. I texted her after that I was home, but ignored everything else. This morning, she sent the picture of the props to the group chat with a few of our mutual friends, and they chimed in saying, "It doesn't even look real." I've muted the chat since, and I'm wondering if I have a leg to stand on before I go back and apologize. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "Not the asshole. Knife phobias are no joke. She's not forgetting your aversion. She's being abusive. First bite? I think she might have a blood and blade fixation. Fidgeting with knives all the time? I knew a couple of guys like that in the 90s, and they were pretentious, insufferable tools who thought they were tough guys. Gods, this gal is traumatic. That's hit some pretty deep anger on your behalf. It makes me want to yell at her and her bad friends. I'm really sorry you are dealing with this. Do not apologize. Get out. She does not respect you." Someone else says, "Not the asshole. Nicole is not a nice person. She repeatedly ignores your boundaries, and this was not a prank. It was a deliberately cruel action to make you think she was hurt. She needs therapy, to give a sincere apology, and do better with your boundaries. Or I would end the relationship with someone who is so cruel and selfish." Someone else says, "Not the asshole. Saying is a prank isn't a license to do anything you want to." And she asked, "Are you crying?" This triggered me. And finally, someone else says, "Why are you dating someone who repeatedly exposes you to something you're traumatized by and doesn't care how hurt you are by it?" And then the OP makes a further update a few hours later that says, "It's overwhelming how much of a response this got, and I tried to read all of your comments. Some of them made me laugh, Some warmed my heart. Others had very hard truths that I still needed to hear, no matter how raw it left me. There are a lot of repeating questions and assumptions. First, we don't live together. At this point, I don't think we ever will. Second, I stayed primarily because the good seemed to outweigh the bad. You remember the negatives more than the positive. So obviously, I just had to remember her positive qualities instead of being swayed by my focus on the bad times. Plus, it was always almost perfect after we had a fight, and I just assumed the boom and bust cycle was normal. I didn't know Nicole liked knives at first. A mutual friend, Crystal, who was in the group chat, and I met Crystal during a community college course, introduced us as I was new to the area, and at first Nicole and I hit it off as we had a lot of shared interests: music, art, outdoors activities, going antiquing, wine, food and cooking, just a lot of things. We started dating and eventually went on a camping and hiking trip where she used a knife to split some kindling and she was being dangerous with it. I remember telling her to watch out, and she asked me to relax because she, quote, did it all the time. She asked me if I wanted to do it myself, and I admitted I really didn't like knives. Later in the trip, we drank by the fire and talked, and that's when I told her about my trauma. She promised to protect me, and I remember that exactly because I had the mental image of her fending off a mugger, and I joked that she was my hero. My trauma has been brought up after that point, and neither of us were drunk at the time. My knife issues typically don't impact my daily life, except to make me more apt to be very slow in the kitchen when chopping things. It doesn't seem like abuse, especially when we're good. When it's bad, it's really rough. I don't have really any other baseline, as I was a late bloomer dating-wise. My dad always said that you should both give 110% in a relationship, but everyone argues. I thought working through the rough patches was normal. That's also why I was preparing to apologize, because it takes two in an argument, so I am responsible as well and need to apologize for my part. In this case, ruining the night with my reaction. I did go through therapy to help cope with the initial incident surrounding my aversion to knives. I was a lot worse when it happened, to the extent where I couldn't have anyone point the knife in the direction of any other living being, or certain songs on the radio that were playing at the time, or certain smells. I've made progress, but clearly not enough to stay with her and deal with her fidgeting with the knives. I will admit to backsliding a bit, in that I seem a lot more anxious when I stay the night and can't stay asleep, or having more nightmares, which is why I believed her when she said I was overreacting. Also concerning the fidgeting, it's not a constant thing. Sometimes she'd go weeks without pulling the knife out. Sometimes she would complain that I only focus on the fact she had used the knife versus how long she had abstained, which seems reasonable to point out. And then we get an update the next day, and let's get into it. It reads, I have no idea how to go about this, but I don't think this would be appropriate to post an Am I the Asshole per their rules, plus it's really long. So here is an update of sorts to this post. A lot of the conversation is paraphrased with quotes that stuck in my mind. I also kept adding to this as things developed, and I'm running on zero sleep, so I'm sorry if it's not very clear. I did reach out to Nicole again yesterday to talk, and I went with the intention of standing my ground and explaining things so she could understand my side. She greeted me with thanks for gracing me with your presence, and asked if I was here to act my age and talk like an adult. She slammed the door behind me and pointed to the couch so we could discuss things. Nicole opened with my reaction was unreasonable and completely out of line considering the situation. I said that things need to change because that prank wasn't okay at all, and she knows I have issues with knife violence, and I asked, what was funny about the prank? She interrupted me and said that ultimatums aren't part of any relationship. So I said, I don't think this is working out for us. I don't think we're happy together. Nicole froze at first, and I started to explain that the knife thing and our respective stances being so different is not fair to either of us. But she repeatedly asked, so you're going to break up nearly 3 years just because of this? I tried to tell her it was more than just this. It was everything else. It was that she keeps forgetting and triggering me, that she loves playing with them, but it upsets me. But she started talking over me and yelling that apparently I think she's an idiot and that I'm the best actor in the world because she never knew I felt so horrible, and that maybe I should call the cops on her for abuse. She grabbed her cell phone and offered it to me again and again, saying, "Go on, call." But when I said we just needed to talk, she interrupted with, "No, you won't, because you know, I know, we both know, no cop is going to arrest me for a joke." Also, I'm not very tall, 5'9", and she's only 5'6", but she was standing right in front of me while I was seated, so I couldn't get up without moving her. After throwing her phone on the couch next to me, she stormed into the kitchen, shouting that she should get rid of all her knives because I'm so terrified. She threw a few into the sink and then the whole block of knives into the trash, the whole time asking, "What about this one? Too sharp? Too scary?" When I flinched at the noises, she said, "Oh, do you feel threatened? How do you think I feel when I have to defend myself against your feelings?" Nicole told me to quit crying, that I can't just use tears to manipulate her, and mocked me when I said, "Please stop." She said she has to walk on eggshells because she has to deal with a boyfriend that can't handle a single joke without running off into the night. It's not hard to not overreact. Literally just think before you go crazy. It's that simple. And that it's ridiculous that a grown man can't handle a knife or a gun, and I refuse to let go of my victimhood because, quote, anyone normal would have gotten over it by now. It's been nearly 9 years. She called me stubborn and childish for picking this hill to die on, that I'm not innocent. It's not fair that I'm allowed to ignore her for hours, but she can't have a little fun. And is my ego really that big? It's sickening that I don't trust her or think she's smart or skilled enough to handle a knife properly, and it's sexist and fanalizing and insulting. At some point, I said I think I need to go home, and it was like a switch. And she said, "Please stop crying. I hate when you cry." Joked, I think, because she laughed. "I guess hibachi dates are off the table, huh? And I should probably take the knives out of the trash now, shouldn't I?" She apologized and said, since it means so much to me, she'll put in more effort. She admitted that I'm such a sensitive guy that if she stopped doing everything that made me uncomfortable, she wouldn't be able to do anything. She pointed that I cried watching My Girl the other day as proof that I'm overly emotional, and it made sense that she thought I would just be in my normal self. But she was sorry for not realizing sooner it was really upsetting me. She promised she would do her best not to bring the knives out when I'm around. Nicole hugged me and told me to let go. We can get through this. There's nothing we can't get over. And asked for a chance to start over. Fresh start tomorrow. No more jokes. It's stupid, but I just said yes. I wanted to go home, get out of her house, and leave while she was still acting nice. And I didn't hold my ground. I feel like an idiot and a coward. I got home and puked and couldn't get to sleep again. Today, Nicole came and dropped off lunch and coffee for me, gave me a kiss, and said she loved me. And all the old ladies in the office were gushing about how cute we are together. I'm going to reach out to one of the guys I'm closer to and the friend who set us up to find out when Nicole got so into knives, because I remember about 7 to 8 months in, it was shortly after the camping trip, and it was Nicole's birthday that she asked for a specific knife as her present. So, at least then, but I can't really remember there being anything else major before then. I'm going to break up officially with her tomorrow with one of the guys if possible, so I can get my stuff from her place. And let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, OP, that is a completely unstable reaction. Also, her toxic masculinity is over the top, and you do not deserve to be treated that way. I'm so sorry she scared you like that, and that she thought it was okay, and you just overreacted. You did not overreact. Your feelings and trauma associated with them are completely valid, and she sounds like a hateful, unkind person. Please do not go back to her unless someone else is there with you, and stay safe. Sending you hugs. You got this tomorrow. You are a strong person. Someone else says, she is completely unhinged. There aren't enough red flags for how she acted, and she honestly needs some professional help. She used fear to keep you around, and that is never healthy. I would not trust being in the same room as her. Seriously, run far away and don't look back. It's not a joke if it stirs up past traumas. The fact that she keeps calling it a joke when it never was is further proof that she doesn't care. She is completely manipulative, and you deserve so much better. Please wait until you can take a friend or two to get your stuff. Someone else says, holy hell, she is 100% abusive. You need to stay away from her. She zeroed in on your trauma and has been using it to exert some sick power over you. Everything she said was completely unreasonable, and she's gaslighting you by making you the problem, not her. Then the moment you resisted, she switched tactics and started to love bomb you. The lunch and coffee were part of the love bombing. Do not be around her alone, ever. She sounds potentially sociopathic. And pay attention to this. You are not a coward in any way. You are a trauma victim. How you react is typical of someone who has been through a trauma, and she's taking full advantage of it. Her standing over you, her words, her tone, her volume, all done on purpose to overwhelm you. She knew how to trigger your response, and she did it all. She is a danger to you. Take care of yourself. And then we don't hear from the OP for a long, long time. We don't end up hearing from him for about 3 whole years. And when he comes back, it is disturbing. And let's get into update number 2, titled Update Years Later to Am I the Asshole? It reads as follows. There's previous information in my profile concerning a post I made on Am I the Asshole a few years ago. I came to Reddit about my girlfriend and her knife prank. It's been a long while since, and I was uncertain if I could update here or there or whatever. Roll this back over a decade ago for more info. When I was a preteen, we experienced a home invasion that resulted in my mother and dog dying, and left me with a lifelong phobia of knives and anxiety surrounding blood and break-ins. Directly following the break-in, I was unable to handle a knife being pointed at another living creature. My brain caught on to stupid things and connected them to the events and made them into triggers. Mom's perfume, the sound of glass shattering or a door banging open, a song that was playing at the time. Even now, I still hate the song, but at least it doesn't trigger a flashback anymore. Blood on beige carpet featured prominently in my nightmares. I worked extensively with a therapist to process what happened and what I'd seen. Recovery took years of therapy, weeks of inpatient care, medication to help with the nightmares, PTSD, depression, and anxiety. We sold the house as soon as we could. I moved out of state as soon as I could. I kept up with therapy and continued to take my medication. My aversion to knives became somewhat minor in how it had impacted my life. I was careful in the kitchen, and I certainly didn't search out knife-throwing competitions, but it was under control in my daily life. It helped that everything seemed to be coming together. I made new friends. I was balancing work and school. I just met the girl who'd become my first long-term adult girlfriend. I know now it was just the honeymoon phase, but it felt like we were progressing well even once infatuation wore off. We stood together through highs and lows and the mediocre middle ground when there's nothing exciting, just the mundane. I thought that was the marker of a steady relationship. to be able to stick together even after the excitement of a new relationship has faded. We went on a few trips together, driving across state lines to meet her family or flying back to see my dad. One of our trips, we went camping, and my fear of knives got brought up. That led to the break-in getting brought up. She seemed to care at the time, even promising to protect me if something ever happened and offering to help install a camera in my apartment. After the camping trip, I don't know if it was always there and I noticed it more after or what, but she started to be more obviously into knives, practicing tricks in front of me, showing videos to me, starting a collection. She even asked for a knife for her birthday that year, showing me exactly which one she wanted. Before, she was into camping, into guns, which ironically I have zero issues with, and how to forage, make shelter, purify water, basic survival skills, and artillery and tanks. She did multiple courses about military history in college, and busted out the textbook sometimes if she remembered something she thought I would find interesting. But suddenly, it seemed like her focus was on carving and skinning animals, on knife wounds and tricks and collecting and displaying knives. She started doing the tricks more often, in front of me, even when sitting next to me on the couch or at the dinner table. She would gesture with the knife without thinking, and even pointed at me. Again, one of my major triggers being knives pointed at people or animals. She started sending me videos of news clips or other break-ins, or news reports of robberies ending in murder, between a bunch of other funny videos or pictures. So checking Snapchat became a game of Russian roulette. If I didn't check the links sent through text, she'd keep sending them and ask what I thought. She'd forget she had the knife in hand when she came up to me, sometimes from behind. My nightmares came back. My anxiety got worse. No matter how often I reminded her to please stop playing with the knife in front of me, or at least not next to me, she would always forget after a little bit. Some part of me refuses to believe there's no way she risked hurting someone just to unnerve me. It came to a head when she pulled a prank where she pretended to lose a finger. We had a huge fight, our biggest one yet. I wish I'd acted differently and hadn't stormed out, but I did. There was a lot about my time with Nicole I would do differently in hindsight. I was so sure I'd just break up with her for good. I don't know why I didn't stay broken up with her. When I did at first, I did it alone because my friend Jack rolled his eyes and called me a pussy for wanting backup. So I did it in a coffee shop instead, hoping the public eye could be my backup. Nicole stared at me with this affronted expression, and it was like I couldn't find the words anymore. Her eyes were huge and wide and hateful, like I've never seen anyone glare at me like that. She gripped onto the cup like she was going to throw it at me. I had it in my head to bolt the second she moved because I could see it so clearly. But then she started crying, loudly, and kept asking why I would do this to her, and that she hoped I found happiness with someone better, since clearly she wasn't enough for me, despite doing everything to be a good girlfriend. I felt like shit, and people were staring, so I wished her well and asked if she wanted me to call a friend, but she told me to leave her alone, so I did. I hate how I handled the breakup, but it felt, in the moment, like autopilot. In short, I lost the support of our mutual friends, who had become my only friends during my relationship with Nicole, which I understand as they knew her for much longer. Jack actually confronted me and called me a piece of trash for embarrassing her like that in public, calling me trash for leaving her sobbing alone and not even offering her a ride home. He wouldn't listen to my explanations and said I could excuse myself, but everyone now knew what kind of guy I really am. People at work mentioned how sad it was that we broke up. I didn't feel like it was the place to explain my reasoning, and after the confrontation with Jack, I didn't feel like I had a right to. I felt like crap, like a bad person, and I felt numb. I tried to move on, to find a new normal, After about a month of us being broken up, she called me and begged for me to come over to help her. She was scared she was going to do something drastic. I went to her immediately. I held her all night, helped her wash her hair after days of not being able to bring herself to. She admitted she'd done a horrible thing and that she couldn't stand how she treated me, that she wished she could go back and change so we could still be together. Didn't know how to address that, so I just stayed with her the whole night. And the next day at work, she came by to drop off a homemade lunch and to thank me for being there for her. I stupidly let myself get sucked back in. I get that it's my fault. Coffee in the morning became dinner and drinks out, became movie nights and going to shows and flea markets together because we still had similar interests. One time, she even noticed a booth with knives and directed us away. And while yes, it wasn't necessary as I could see a knife display and not be freaked out, it was a nice gesture because she would have gone there and either bought one herself or asked me to buy it for her. One of the multiple changes that made me think maybe she was truly making an effort, that at least maybe we could be friends again. I started to get invited back into the group somewhat. 2 months later, she kissed me. We were both drunk and it didn't go any further. I didn't talk to her about it because I thought she didn't remember. But then she approached me to ask if there was any salvaging us, if she'd proven that she was different now and things would be better. I thought maybe. I stayed because she really had been so sweet. It was like starting over, and we got back together. I was permitted back into the group in full, though Crystal had stopped talking to everyone and Jack still refused to talk to me. And while it was awkward at first, soon enough we were acting like we'd never stop being friends for even a minute. It felt so good to go back to normal. It was like a weight off my chest and like I could breathe again. It was nice for a while. She was so careful about the knives thing, and it really did feel so normal and steady. Sure, we had small fights, but we always made up shortly after, and she'd be overwhelmingly loving after the fact. It felt like it was before, so it felt normal. I can't pinpoint when it started to creep back, but maybe when she started watching documentaries on her phone with the sound so high while sitting next to me. Or when she'd poke or grab me while I was cutting up dinner, then laugh at my startled response. Or she'd scoff if I teared up watching or reading something, then tell me later that it was out of fondness, not exasperation, and I really needed to stop reading so much into it. Or she'd yell at me for forgetting something that she never even told me about, and then the next day she'd get frustrated that I didn't insist properly, that she was mistaken. Like, it was all small things that on their own weren't even that big of a deal, and I didn't feel like I could just speak up about it, or else I was nitpicking her. In hindsight, I was making excuses and clinging to when she was nice to me, trying to do anything to make sure we just stayed happy and without bumps. Part of it was that I knew now that I'd be alone, that no one would understand why I'd throw away a good relationship, that being with her was the best thing that could ever happen to me. We moved in together 4 months after us getting back together. She was hinting around that it was the only way to prove to her that I'd forgiven her and that way we could move on and be happy. She insisted I move into her place because it was easy to move an apartment into a house than the other way around. It constantly felt like she was dangling that night where she was S-word over me, like one wrong move from me, and maybe the next time she wouldn't call for help. When we had fights, she paced through the house, flicking a knife, looping from the bedroom to the living room to the office, or said every single argument was really due to the fact I was holding a grudge over the prank and that we wouldn't be arguing if I just grew up and stopped taking out my trauma on her. She'd tell me not to piss her off because it would be too easy for her to, quote, make a mistake, and no one would think twice about what happened. A few times, she'd gone on a rampage and overturned tables and threw glasses into the sink and dishwasher and said we were done for good, only for the next day to blow up my phone, begging me to talk this out, or have her friends encourage me to swallow my pride and go back to her because she's miserable without me and she's trying so hard. Or she'd just wake me up with a kiss after making me sleep on the couch, as if the night before never happened. If I asked about the night before, the fight would start all over yet this time. It'd be my fault because she was trying to move on, but I was holding a grudge. The following nearly 10 months were the most terrifying, anxiety-riddled period of my life, and I only had myself to blame. Coming home from work, I puked my guts out more than a few times on the way, just because I didn't want to go back to her. I felt trapped. She threw away the blanket my mother had knitted me for my crib because it was dirty. It wasn't dirty. It was a knit blanket that had been repaired repeatedly and hand-washed frequently. So she'd accidentally put it through the wash and destroyed it, then bought a completely different throw blanket as a replacement, and got mad when I didn't consider the matter resolved. She pulled another prank, this time with a fake positive pregnancy test, and berated me for not being overjoyed because I immediately started panicking about the cost, bringing up a child in our dysfunction, and handling the stress, rather than being excited. I feel like she wanted me to be happy so that she could crush my joy, and so was angry that I didn't play to her expectation. That night, she threatened me with a knife, pointing it at me and saying she should just snip me right then since I didn't want to have kids with her, and then held me as I sobbed because I went into a panic. I didn't want her touching me, but I didn't know what else to do but let her, and do apologize to her. Another time, she did something dangerous with the knife during a fight and said I clearly want her to commit S-word, and didn't stop until I screamed at her begging her to stop. Sometimes when driving, she'd start speeding and swerving, or closing her eyes while on the highway, and saying my fear meant I didn't trust her. Nicole just kept getting worse by the day. I remember waking up one morning with a moment of clarity. I knew she would eventually kill me. I was sleeping next to my murderer. It still wasn't enough to push me away. Escaping her orbit seemed like too much, more than I could handle. Everything I had in me was focused on just surviving day to day. I never knew if she'd break up with me on a whim, or pick a fight, or be constantly pushing me closer to a panic attack all night, or if she'd flip and be so sweet and caring. I felt like every day was Russian roulette hour to hour. Every word I said or action I did or didn't do, a chance to start a raging fight. She tossed out my antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication one night, and then during the resulting argument, she made a big show of forgiving me for raising my voice. I shouldn't have done that. I have no excuse. And then helping me call in an emergency refill. For weeks after, because I said I wanted to break up during the argument, she would ask if I was going to try to run away. Every time that something went wrong. Takeout order wrong. I spilled a cup of water. Streaming service not working immediately. Oh, don't get your panties in a twist and run off. And do I have to worry about you leaving me over this mistake too? Eventually, that tapered off, but maybe once a month during a fight, she would tearfully go to our friends and ask them to mediate, then during the meeting say that I kept threatening to leave her again over nothing, and how scared she was of losing me when she didn't know what set me off. More than a few times, she showed me texts from them where her friends were saying how she deserved better and didn't need to put up with me, but she'd tell me, I don't listen to them because I love you anyway. She'd slap me and push me during arguments. I could never do anything right, because even doing what she wanted without argument, or not looking her in the eye, could be enough to send her off the rails. Sometimes, as a joke, just in general, one of our friends would pull out a little pack of tissues and hand it over to me in case I'd run out, or make a production of hiding the butter knife at dinner under the napkin. It was humiliating, but if I spoke up, suddenly I was oversensitive and embarrassment, no fun, and I had to learn how to deal with adult friendships and jokes, and they'd ask her how she could stand it. As a result, I didn't spend much time with them either. Usually Nicole would just go out with them, and I'd stay home, which was the most relaxing I've ever felt during that time, except for when she started randomly coming home without any notice or timeline. Like saying she'd be home at 6, but then not coming back till midnight or early morning. Or saying she'd be gone until 10 and coming early back at 2 or 3. or randomly calling the house phone to make sure I was home, and getting angry if she even thought I sounded breathless, accusing me of having left. She started hinting around that marriage would be the next logical step, and I was insulting her by not having proposed yet. Then she bought an engagement ring with my credit card and started showing off to all her friends how perfect my choice was. I didn't want to marry her. I felt bad for not wanting to marry her. I wanted us to be happy, and maybe giving her the wedding she wanted would help. I didn't want to marry her. In all those months, I never went to sleep feeling safe. I lied awake in bed, hyper aware of how close she was and trying to go over in my head if I had behaved well enough to keep her happy and what I could do to prevent another explosion. In hindsight, it's sickening how long I let this go on for. In the moment, it was just about all I could think to do. I often woke up with nightmares which would in turn piss her off and set her off in a mood for the next day. But if I suggested sleeping separately, she would rage about how I was calling her a bad girlfriend / fiance / etc. I started to keep a notebook at work and just writing shit down. Things she'd said or done. Incidents and what I'd done to set her off. It helped me feel more sane. And also more like a moron because I could read back on times she actually hurt me and I still hadn't left. Every time I thought about leaving, I felt sick inside. I'd lose every social contact I had. I would have to find a new place to live. I'd have to bar her from my workplace, but they can't do anything without a restraining order, and that itself felt like a hurdle too. I dropped all my old friends in favor of her and felt like they refused to even talk to me again. I was the idiot that let her back into my life and rekindled the relationship. Despite overwhelming feedback, I was stupid enough to deserve every bit of what was happening, and too dumb to deserve to escape after wasting my previous chances. I was super depressed and had frequent fantasies of just committing an S-word. The worst part wasn't the anxiety and terror, though. It was when she was sweet and caring. For example, she always went all out for my birthday or anniversaries or Christmas, with thoughtful gifts, except for the year where she kicked me out for the evening after throwing some decorations at the wall because they stopped working, for which she blamed me because I put them up. She was sweet and gentle one day, or even for a week or two, only to slowly start ramping up the tension until she exploded yet again. She had an uncanny ability to blame me in ways that made me feel responsible for her emotions and for forcing her to react violently. When we drove out to visit my dad for Easter, things started to change. Dad was concerned about how quiet I'd become and that I hadn't come for Thanksgiving or Christmas or even called on New Year's Eve like I used to. That I looked tired, unhappy, and thin. Nicole was on her best behavior the whole time and even left her knives in the car. Even tried to get everyone to focus on the engagement ring, but Dad still saw something was wrong. For 3 weeks after, he kept trying to contact me, but she wouldn't let me talk without her in the room, and she checked my phone anytime she left me alone and checked the records online to see if I deleted my calls. Eventually, I managed to get a burner phone and hid it at work, which allowed me to talk to my dad freely. He flew over with my uncle, and they helped me gather my stuff from her house. When Nicole started sobbing and begging me to stay, my uncle kept her from the kitchen knives and had his phone ready to call 911 if she tried to hurt us. When Nicole started to insist I was taking her stuff too, even though I was only taking things either I brought with me or I bought for her, I just let it go. She got to keep a few sentimental items of mine, and the loss hurts still, but the most important ones I was able to take. Like, I was able to get all of my documentation and cards out of her house. I didn't even bother with the ring. It was just money and she was already acting up. Uncle drove my car home while Dad had me fly with him. I'm ashamed to admit that the months directly following the breakup were almost worse than the time I spent with her, because I was out of survival mode and I couldn't force myself to function the way I used to. I felt like a parasite on my father, unable to get my stuff together, falling apart over nothing, being so volatile it frightened me. I'm in therapy again. Sometimes I feel better, like I can see a way forward, But then I feel like I'm back in the thick of it and I'll never go back to normal and I'm permanently broken. Worse, every time I cry or get triggered or have a flashback, I can still hear a voice in my head calling me over emotional and too sensitive. That I'd be fine by now if I just got over myself. That what I went through wasn't that bad. She sent mail to my dad's house for a while, threatening letters and pleas for me to see reason and stop overreacting. Pictures of us that were sentimental. Guilt trips. At first, I couldn't get a restraining order right away against her because I moved. Something about the jurisdictions and courts, but when she sent those letters, it helped at least make sure she couldn't continue to contact me. I found my old laptop a while ago, and it had the password repopulate. It wouldn't leave my mind, especially when I read what people were saying. Right now, I'm just rambling to get my head straight. To be honest, but my DMs were full of people saying how the intimacy must be amazing. How stupid guys get when they want to stick their pee-pee in something. That I don't have balls or a backbone, clearly, and I just need to man up. Basically, everything I told myself to remind me of what I did to deserve being stuck with her. I don't know if I can muster the courage to address any responses to them, but I really just want to tie up this loose end in my life so maybe I can stop rehashing it mentally and finally move on. I might also give my therapist the notebook I kept of Nicole's abuse, but I haven't wanted to even look at it. There's still a box of stuff that I haven't opened up because it's all messed with my head so much. What I wish I knew at the start of all this was that any amount of genuine discomfort isn't an acceptable price in a relationship, and you're allowed to stop giving them more chances, even if they're trying and seem sorry. You're not obligated to help people change, even if you love them. Even if they do slightly better. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "Glad you got out, OP. Wish you all the best, and remember, it wasn't and isn't your fault. She used every trick she could. You survived and got out. That's a lot. I think there are support groups, maybe worth looking into. Talk with the people who had similar experiences. Hope you'll find resources and support you need for recovery and will live happy life from now on. Best of wishes to you." And the OP responds and says, "I appreciate that. It's hard to remember how to keep on sometimes, so thank you." And someone else says, "Hi there, OP. Thank you for updating us on your situation. I've often thought about you since your first post years ago, and genuinely, I am so incredibly sorry for everything you went through. Please know that what you were put through was not your fault in any way. Abuse is a real mind F word. Excuse my language. And looking back from a place of freedom, your actions can seem odd even to yourself. But in those moments, you aren't entirely yourself. Of course, we can throw around what ifs after the response to your last post, and of course, I wish you hadn't had to go through the last few years the way you did. But what's most important is that right now, you are safe again. Your dad and your uncle are wonderful people who have shown you great support, and I can guarantee your father does not want to see you as a burden and is likely just happy that his child is safe. And I wish you all the best with your future and hope you find only healing and comfort in the years to come. Good luck with your therapy. Make sure to take all the time you need with it and do everything at a pace best suited for you. You are the priority, and I hope it all works out for you. Well done on getting away from her. I'm so proud of you." And the OP responds and says, "It's hard to feel proud because I'm still messed up. I feel like it's been too long for me to feel this way still. Thank you, nonetheless." And this is the last we have ever heard from the OP, and hopefully the OP is doing better now. And man, that ex-girlfriend of his was a complete psychopath. I mean, who plays around with knives like that? And who, intentionally tries to make someone scared and re-trigger their past traumas? I mean, this lady was a complete psychopath, and the OP is honestly lucky he didn't get hurt or honestly killed, because this girl seems completely off her rocker and a danger to everyone around her, So hopefully she gets the help she needs. But for now, it's good that the OP is away from her. And hopefully she doesn't, get back in contact with him. And hopefully the OP doesn't, go back to her like he did prior. But I guess we'll have to see. But comment down below your thoughts. I'm curious to see what you guys have to think about this. And on to the next one. I've been spending time with a good friend more recently, but I think he's only doing it so he can look at my daughter. The last few months, I've been chatting to a friend more regularly than previously. We've been friends for over a decade, and we used to be really close, but we slowly drifted apart. I should probably mention we are both men in our 40s. It's been great catching up with him, and honestly, I really needed a friend, so it's just been great. He's got a long-term girlfriend and 2 children. A couple of months ago, we visited his house for the first time. He recently moved, and we weren't speaking much before that, just an occasional comment on Facebook. And me, my son, and 20-year-old daughter spent a few hours honestly just chatting about nothing, but in a good way, While we were there, I noticed that he kept looking at my daughter out of the corner of his eye. I never really caught him fully looking, so I thought nothing of it, especially as he has known my kids for over a decade. I didn't mention it to my daughter, as I didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable if it was nothing. A couple of months went by, and we visited them again. He kept talking to my daughter, and not really to me, which is fine, but it just seemed odd when my daughter has really bad anxiety and she can't really hold a conversation, and she makes it clear when she's uncomfortable talking. He just seemed to keep looking at her and talking. Even if he was talking to me, he would just look at her. The final straw was last week. We visited them, and we've been having a heat wave, so we are all dressed in as minimal as possible. My daughter in a thin pair of skirts and a t-shirt, and my son in a pair of athletic shorts and a gym top, and me in a polo shirt and white chino shorts. Nothing unusual, just basic summer wear. When we were in conversation, he would look at my daughter. When anyone told a joke, he would smirk a little, or give a small laugh depending, but if my daughter told something mildly funny, he would really laugh to the point that even she would look awkward. He kept dropping out of conversation and just staring at her. I think she noticed it as well because she started to lean back in her chair to try to cover herself, even though she was fine. She looked uncomfortable. Then, when the sun set, she put on a thick jacket and zipped it up. I don't know if he's just trying to be friendly and he doesn't know how to act, or if he's only inviting us around to stare at her. And if so, then I don't know what to do. Yes, she is 20, but she's still my little girl, and this man watched her grow up. It just seems strange. I don't know if I should say something or just don't go around there again. Either way, I think it's the end of the friendship, which is a shame, but oh well. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "Trust your gut. It sounds like this guy is around for all the wrong reasons. Also, who just stares at someone like that, as the whole situation seems creepy and way out of line? Definitely best to keep your kids safe around this guy and cut off contact. At least that's what I would do." Another user says, "Even if you want to say it's no big deal, it looks like it's a deal to your daughter, and she always comes first. You know what to do." And someone else says, "Why not hang out with your friends without your kids? If he has no interest in that, then you know his intentions. Also, ask your daughter if he has tried contacting her on social media." And then the OP gives us an update 2 days later. And let's get into it. It reads, "Updates from my last post. I spoke to my daughter about the whole thing and wanted to know what she thought about it. All because I didn't want to say anything if she didn't think it was odd. She told me that after the first time we saw him again a few months ago, he had appeared outside our work after she finished her shift and asked if she wanted a lift home instead of getting the bus. She said that since he was a good friend of mine, she trusted him and got in his car. On the ride home, he repeatedly touched her leg and started talking about how much she's changed since he saw her last, before we all met up, and how much of an adult she looks now. He told her she's growing into her body, quote, like a good girl. My daughter said that she would walk the rest of the way home because she didn't want to put him out too much, but he insisted on driving her all the way. She said she kept moving away from him, but he was leaning to touch her knees. She said that at a red light not long before the house, he gave her his mobile number and texted himself from her phone and told her to call him if she wanted a lift or anything else. Then, when she got home, she went to leave the car, but he grabbed her arm and asked her where his hug and kiss goodbye was. Not a new thing. He gives us all a hug every time. And when she leaned in, he held her tight and whispered that she should call him. In the last few months since then, he has repeatedly been sending her explicit texts and images and waiting outside her work, asking her if she would like a lift home, even though every time she's said no. She said she didn't want to say anything because she didn't want to upset me, as he was the only friend I had. I feel sick thinking about this. This is my daughter. She's 20, but she's still my little girl, and I feel like I have put her in danger. I have messaged him asking him to stop contacting my family, and I've sent him the screenshots from her phone as reasons why, but he is messaging me, asking me why when she's an adult, and the only sleazy thing he's done is cheating on his girlfriend, as my daughter never physically said the word stopped. She just ignored him. I'm so angry at him and myself. Edit. I'd like to say thanks to everyone for the advice. Also, I've been getting a lot of mom comments, and although I appreciate the sentiment very much, I am her dad. Unfortunately, her mom passed away quite a few years ago, but I really appreciate that everyone thought I was her mom. It really is the biggest compliment to me. I must be doing something right. We went and spoke to our local police, and they couldn't really help us as she had willingly gotten into his car. They did say that as we have spoken to him already, they could keep a file open, and if it continues, then they would be able to take action. Honestly, it seems that they don't really care about it at all, which is alarming and upsetting. We sent these screenshots and an explanation to his girlfriend, and we've had some missed calls from him, but that's not our problem. We've blocked him on everything and have completely removed him from every social media. My daughter has spoken to her work, and they have said that until she is able to find another job, they will ensure that at least one other staff member will wait with her for the bus, and I will be meeting her at the first stop in our town to take her directly home on days I'm not working, and on days I am, then her grandparents will be picking her up. She is safe. I also had a lot of comments suggesting I get violent with this man. Although I do appreciate that a lot of people would be choosing the other route of resolving the problem face to face, I'm not like that. I would like to be. I would like to say that there's no problem I couldn't solve that way, but that's simply not me. It doesn't make me a bad dad either. I found another way to solve the problem and make sure my daughter is safe and comfortable. Thank you all for your help and advice. It's nice to find some support through the internet sometimes. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "It's not your fault, but you need to have a sit down and talk through the socialization for women to be nice and how to get past that mental block. This is something a lot of us go through, and it puts us in really awful situations. Help her understand that her safety is the most important thing. She doesn't have to be nice or put up with things like this. There's probably some very eloquent people who can speak to this topic on YouTube. It's not me. But I want to make sure she knows she doesn't have to take this shit for the rest of her life, even with the anxiety and desire not to rock any boats." And the OP responds and says, "I've told her many times growing up that if she doesn't feel comfortable doing something, no matter what it is, then she needs to say that. It doesn't matter if it upsets someone or offends someone. All that matters is that she is safe and comfortable. I'm hoping that she will be like this from now on. and I just hope that she knows I'm here for her no matter what. And then another user says, get her a weapon. And the OP says, we are in the UK, so she's legally not allowed any weapons, including pepper spray. The only thing she is allowed is an alarm, which she already had anyway. We are looking into some objects which can be carried around legally or discreetly. Currently, we are looking into a key ring, which is like a long, sharpened stick, though there's not many places willing to ship them to us. I'm so very sorry to hear what you've been through, and I wish you well throughout your life. And then we have never heard from the OP ever again, so I don't know if the OP's ex-friend ended up going to jail or getting in more trouble, but I just hope that the OP's daughter and the OP are able to remain safe from this creep that the OP once called his friend. My 41 female partner of 2 years, 44 male, is adamant I am cheating on him. I am not. Help? Just a bit of context. We've been together for 2 years. He has 2 kids, I have 1 kid. Irrelevant to the story. We live apart. I bought a home a few months before we started dating, and are together only when our kids are with their other parent. He's the guy that has treated me the best of all my relationships, and I love him dearly. I'm a chronically anxious and stressed person, and he's absolutely my peace. But today, he sucker punched me with this. He's absolutely convinced that I am cheating on him. The reason he suddenly started thinking this is because 2 days ago, I wanted to show him something on my phone. There was an irrelevant tab opened. My Hotmail account that is full of spam. Had this account for the past 24 years, but mostly used my Gmail. He saw, quickly in passing, that there was a folder with a man's name. Let's say James. I don't remember the purpose of the folder. It's empty. I haven't touched it in 15 years. No idea why it exists. It was probably useful at some point, but no idea. Well, now, he's convinced that, number 1, I closed the tab too quick. Number 2, I was acting weird and nervous and suspicious. And number 3, this means I have cheated or I am actively cheating. That's his perspective. Now, on to the actual truth. I am absolutely not cheating on him. He is the man of my dreams, love of my life. I have never ever given him a reason to even suspect I'm cheating. I spent 1 entire week with him at his place. Never hid my phone or anything like that. When I'm at my house, it means I'm with my kiddo, and my time is 100% devoted to her. I also work a lot. There is not a single second in my life where I would have time to devote to any other person, even through email. I spend my downtime at home being with kiddo and the cat, watching YouTube videos. I send him a lot of pictures of me chilling with my cat as well, and we have a constant communication going. I'm very chatty through text. Anyways, at first I was super pissed and also confused because why on earth would you not trust me? What is happening? No matter what I say, he says I don't make sense whatsoever, and he's just adding 1 + 1, and to him the answer is 2. I keep telling him that he's the one not making any sense. We're back and forth on the texting. He doesn't even want to speak over the phone or come over to talk about it. I've sent him numerous screenshots of my email with unopened emails that go back more than a year. I've sent screenshots of me typing the keyword James in the email and nothing coming up. I've shown him the completely empty sent folder, which to me is weird. I've sent numerous emails over the years. Why is it empty? And I've also given him the login and password so he can look for himself. I have accumulated a lot of junk in that email over the many years I've had it, but rarely use it now. It is just a receptacle of all my Amazon orders, my McDonald's app receipts, and various spam emails. I'm pissed that he doesn't trust me. He says he needs time to think. I'm stuck in a loop of pissed, confused, and sad. What's going on? Help. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, is this incredibly out of character for him? Or has he always been a bit jealous and suspicious? Could he be the one cheating and projecting? And the OP responds and says, "This is wildly out of character. I am unsure if he would be projecting his own cheating. Anything is really possible, but I would hope not. I don't believe so. His high libido and we have intimacy daily when we're together, which is every other week, except when one of us is sick. I give him everything he needs in that department and all the other departments as well. We take good care of each other typically." Another commenter says, "I hear so many stories about stuff like this happening on Reddit. I feel like most people would say, he's projecting and he's the one cheating and just try to push the blame on you. You're the only one outside of him who truly knows this relationship. Has there been anything else going on in the relationship as of late?" And the OP responds and says, "Nothing. Everything is fine. We are great. We have excellent communication. We talk through things. Never had a fight. Never scream at each other. We're very loving physically, but we can also coexist quietly in the same space doing our own thing. It's truly, truly amazing typically. This is completely bonkers to me right now." I told him I understand where he was coming from, and I am willing to work through this with him. He has full access to everything he ever wants, whenever he wants. I have shown myself to be trustworthy to a fault. When I say haven't touched, I'm not sure if it's a translation thing. I just mean I have not used it as my primary email in a very long time, and the email is only used as an inbox for receipts and useless crap. And then we get an update 4 days later. And the OP said it best themselves. This one does not end well. Let's get into the update. The OP says, "So it did not end well. After 48 hours of back and forth through texting, because he refused to even speak to me over the phone or face to face, and me giving him my password so he can go check for himself that nothing was messy, he still wouldn't back down. At this point, his behavior was concerning, and I thought he may have a mental episode going on. It was getting to be too much. He was texting me at all hours of the night trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense in the first place. So I blocked him. When he realized that he sent me emails at my work email asking me to check my Hotmail, which had nothing different in it. When I blocked his email, he decided to message my best friend and telling her, if I can't talk to her, I'll go through you instead. My friend has literally nothing to do whatsoever with this whole thing. She never replied and is sticking with me because she's also seen how crazy he is acting. So I thought that was that. Yesterday at work, I was visibly sad and distressed, and my whole team hugged me, offered support, and I had lunch with my other good friend and colleague. So the day goes by, and I get off of work at 4. I am walking to my car in the parking lot, flanked by 2 colleagues, and I'm kind of explaining the whole story. They go to one of the girls' cars because they carpool. I walk towards my own car, which is parked 2 rows away. I hear a loud man's voice behind me. I turned around, and it's him. He's walking very quickly towards me and still talking nonsense about emails. I hold my hand up and say, I'm not doing this with you right now. All the while calculating whether I'm safe to go to my car or not. He was screaming at me that I was a horrible person. I've never seen him act like this before at all. A little energy pushed me to turn around and go to my colleague's car. At this point, I'm shaking and scared. I enter her car and start hyperventilating. They're like, we'll drive you home. He was about 6 feet from the car, hate in his eyes, motioning me to get out of the car. We drove off. I kept apologizing to them, crying and looking behind us the whole trip to make sure he wasn't following us. When I came home, my mother was there. I broke down and she called the cops. A nice officer told me over the phone, I got nothing else going on right now. You're my priority, and I'm coming to you as soon as I can. He came to my home, took my deposition, was extremely patient and understanding, explained everything that he was going to do after. My ex was placed under arrest for criminal harassment with certain conditions to follow. Not sure about the legal terms here, but they did not handcuff him or take him to jail. It was just a verbal thing, and he will probably be summoned in court at a later date. I have a good network of people who care, and I believe I am safe. Thanks, everybody. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "The one piece of advice I will offer. People like this often ignore the police because they are no longer living in our reality. Been there. Just because they have mental health issues, clearly here, it doesn't mean you have to feel 1 ounce of sympathy or guilt because whatever is going on. It's destroyed any chance of them being allowed in your life anymore. You may well get guilt/sympathy pangs, and you should grab them by the collar and throw them out on their ass the moment they enter your head. The only way to mentally deal with stocky exes is to literally stop caring about them at all, as then the only decisions you will make will be around your own safety." And the OP replies and says, "Thank you. I needed to hear this. I am angry at him, but sometimes during the day, I have small bouts of things like, did I overreact? Am I being too harsh with having him arrested? And I have huge regrets about it. But then I realize, hey, the actual officer of the law told me he had enough motive to literally arrest him. So I'm doing the right thing." Another commenter says, "Reminds me of an episode of ER, I think. And the person acting irrationally ended up having a brain tumor." And the OP responds and says, "Yep, some tumors can change a person's personality drastically. Sadly, this is not the case here. He's a drug addict and uses multiple times a day, which leads me to think that's where his little mental episode stemmed from." And another user says, "Stay safe, OP. Change passwords, monitor bank details and credit, limit your visibility across social media to friends, and maybe consider asking friends not to tag you when out for a reasonable period of time. This will limit his ability to bump into you unexpectedly." Unfortunately, the police can be quite slow to act on these cases, so do look after yourself by taking reasonable legal precautions. Continue to document any unwanted interactions and report them to the police. And then the OP makes a mini update on the same post a few hours later, and this reads, "I just had a 2-hour conversation with his ex. Let's call her Jess. Not the mother of his kids, but the girl he dated between the kid's mother and me. A very interesting conversation. She has lived exactly the same situation as me, minus the calling of cops. She told me he was ultra controlling, physically and verbally abusive to his 2 sons, a bad drug habit, an unhealthy/borderline inappropriate relationship with the mother of his children, and he was psychologically and SA towards Jess. She told me he used to put her on a pedestal, same as me, but he had a lot of behavioral problems that I've noticed but chose to ignore just because I loved him so much. I hope he gets the help he needs." And then the OP makes another mini update the next day, and it reads, "He's following me. Saw him twice today where he shouldn't have been. Documented that to the police station. They are super nice and understanding. Thank God." Then the OP makes another update that says, "So far so good. Nothing worthy to mention since the second update. I have many people in the hospital I work at offer to walk me to the car. I am never alone. I am actually safer at work than at home. Everyone has been wonderful." And this ended up being the last post we have ever received from the OP, and I just really hope that this guy left her alone. I mean, this guy is completely psychotic, delusional, and unhinged. I mean, he obviously has a drug problem, so he might not be in the best state of mind, and so hopefully he was, arrested, or the OP got a restraining order in place and got this guy to get away from her, because this guy could be dangerous. And we never got an update again, so we don't know what ended up happening, but hopefully the OP is doing all right. I saw a deer with forward-facing eyes. It followed me home. I first saw the deer a week ago. My boyfriend and I went hiking last weekend. It was for our anniversary, and we finally had some time off work to spend some time with one another. My boyfriend, Aaron, was so excited. He'd grown up in the mountains, and so he loved the idea of us heading out to his hometown to hike. It was sweet seeing him this happy. We'd been in a bit of a slump in our relationship because of work. He'd been put on nights and I still worked days, so we rarely saw each other. We had tried our best to see each other at home, but it was hard. This is exactly what we needed. Some quality time together. "You're gonna love this place," he had told me in the car. I promise. God, I wish that was true. It didn't take us long to reach his hometown. Smooth sailing, all things considered. Traffic was light, sun stayed up throughout, and the tunes were on point. It was your standard rural town. It was quiet and reserved, the place adorned with adorable little mom and pop shops and a miniature fountain in the center. We found this cute little cabin on the outskirts of town. It was small, but unbelievably cozy when you put the fire on. One thing that stood out to me was that the place was littered with huge pine trees. Aaron told me how proud he was when he climbed one of them as a kid. I shrugged it off. I mean, it's a tree, but oh my God. I understood how amazing of a feat that was now. These things were massive. They pierced through the clouds like giant shards of green. My neck killed after watching them for so long. I had never seen trees this big before. It was like they kept rising and rising and never stopped. There were tons of snowy mountains too. They encircled the town like a mighty wall, protecting it from outside dangers. It was simply breathtaking. Much different than the desert I grew up in. His parents still lived there, so we went to their place for dinner when we finished unpacking. They are a lovely couple. I hadn't eaten that well in a while. His mom made a spicy meatloaf and I ate so much of it. I had to pop my belt afterwards. Aaron couldn't really handle the spice, so it was hilarious seeing him gulp down liters of water in between each tiny morsel. His face was flushed after. So was his dad's. They looked so much like each other. Once dinner was finished, we all sat in their living room, nursing glasses of wine. Aaron drank the rest of his water. We left around 8 p.m. I can remember it because we wanted to head back before it was totally dark. The sun was setting, plunging the streets into shadow. The moon had been up for a while and now it had begun to shine beautifully against the darkening blue of the twilight sky. Street lamps hadn't been switched on yet, so we had to drive slowly and be on the lookout for people or animals. The lights from the shops became pinpricks in the rearview mirror, and eventually we reached the western outskirts of the town. I was lucky that Aaron knew the roads inside and out. I would have crashed as soon as we reversed out of his parents' driveway. We were quiet on the trip back. I think we didn't know what to talk about. "Well, I'm full." Aaron's voice broke the silence. "Yeah, me too." I gave a soft laugh. The car was noiseless again before we both spoke at the same time. "Are you okay?" We matched each other. For the first time in a while, the pair of us laughed together. It was gentle but genuine. It was nice. "Yeah, I'm okay," I giggled. "You?" "Yeah, not bad." Aaron chuckled to himself, hands relaxing on the wheel. The silence wasn't as tense anymore. We knew we were tired. That's all. "The trail's going to look so pretty tomorrow," he chirped, that big smile of his returning to his face. I was going to say something when he immediately stuck his arm out and hit my chest, creating a barrier to hold me back. He stomped his foot on the brake, hard. He had held his arm out across my chest to keep me from plummeting forward into the windshield. It was so abrupt. I fell into his arm and had the air knocked out of my lungs. When the car jolted to a stop, I snapped backwards against the seat, narrowly avoiding banging the back of my head into the headrest. Aaron's arm was still shielding my chest when he fell backwards. Luckily, his head missed the headrest like myself, and he slowly leaned his neck back to put his head against the leather. We sat there, panting after the sudden stop. Aaron was looking forward, eyebrows furrowed and his mouth contorted into an open scowl. Came out of nowhere, he muttered under his breath. I stared onwards, eyes fixated on the object in the road. It was a deer. She was an average doe, antlerless, and she had pretty white freckles dotted on her back. She wasn't looking at us, though. Her head was facing the road ahead of us. Her ears were completely still, not even a quiver at the sound of the car screeching to a halt. A deer, I gasped out. Aaron had his lips pressed into a tight, thin line. I noticed his chest wasn't rising, and then came to the realization that he was holding his breath. His eyes were wobbling, tears forming. He hadn't blinked once since he slammed the brakes. In fact, he hadn't moved. What? He murmured in a wispy tone. He was breathless. I watched him with wary eyes, awaiting his reaction. I had never seen him this fearful before. It reminded me of a child staring into his closet when he heard a bump in the night. We sat there for another few seconds before I decided to take action and honk the horn. Looking back, I think this was the worst thing I had ever done. I pushed Aaron's arm towards him and I pressed harshly down on the horn. A quick beep echoed into the woods. I waited. The doe didn't move. I furrowed my brow and started to feel a strange discomfort in my skin. It was as if I had done something stupid. Hell, even illegal. This awful feeling ran up my neck. I was scared of a deer, of all things. The woods were pitch black by that point, and this unease made me want to head home as soon as we could. Aaron was obviously shaken. I hated feeling so afraid. So, out of embarrassment and anger, I yelled. I yelled at a deer. I moved back over to my side of the car and put the window down. I leaned out of it and yelled with as much power as my vocal cords could muster. Move. Fear definitely put some power behind my voice. As soon as the word left my lips, a rough hand ragged my shoulder back into the seat of the car. I looked back with confusion, only to see a horrified Aaron glaring at me. He put the window up and hissed, "What the hell are you doing?" "It's a deer," I snapped back, desperate to get away from the road and head home. "You haven't scared off a deer before?" Aaron shook his head in disbelief and turned back to the animal. I did so too, hoping that the deer had taken the hint and galloped off back into the undergrowth. It hadn't even flinched. The thing was still stuck there, neck twisted to the side and thin legs pinned straight. The dread washed over me, sending a horrible shiver down my spine. Maybe it was death? Then, as if it had heard me think, the deer ran off in the most awful way possible. It made me recoil so far back in my seat I was practically moving the chair back. It kept its legs straight and lobbled back into the bushes, like a crappy stop-motion movie. The deer kept its head facing away from us, bobbing back and forth. It looked like a spring bouncing around after you pull it back and let it go. It was jarring, seeing an elegant creature moving in such a disjointed way. It was slow too, taking its time to carefully plod back into the woods. Aaron and I looked at it disappear into the abyss of the pines, wide-eyed with disgust. He continued to stare at the animal before I had to shake him out of whatever trance he was trapped in. He shook his head and thrust the car into first gear, the pair of us eager to get into the cabin. It took another 10 minutes for us to reach it. Aaron was driving slightly above the speed limit, but I didn't blame him. I kept thinking about any logical reasons as to why the doe had behaved like that. When we eventually arrived, the pair of us sped walk inside and locked the door. Aaron double-checked all the windows were locked, and we stayed the night snuggled up in our bedroom watching a random drama on my laptop. The thought of the deer was fading now, with my consciousness nailing the whole thing down to tiredness. I had seen weird deer before. The idea of one being deaf or injured made more sense to me than it being anything unnatural. It was our anniversary tomorrow, and that was the main thing on my mind. Aaron, however, was twitchy all night. He was the one driving, so I could understand why he was unsettled. He's a good driver, and I guess that he was shocked he didn't see the deer earlier. The next morning was much better. Aaron woke me up with a breakfast in bed, much to my delight. He seemed much more calm than the night before. There was still a hint of nervousness behind his eyes, but I shrugged it off. I can't describe the happiness I felt just being there with him. The pair of us set off around 1, and the hike was supposed to last us for about 2 to 3 hours, depending on how long our breaks would be. It was supposed to be a wonderful couple of hours in nature. It was much longer than that. We told Aaron's parents that we'd be done by 4, and that we'd left a key under the doormat outside. We also told them which trail we were heading on, so they knew where we were if the worst case would happen. They then told us to look out for mountain lions, and we assured them we would. I was eager to get out there. Despite last night's events, it had been a while since I went hiking. But with Aaron by my side, I knew it was going to be a safe but fun trip. The first half of the trek was perfect. We walked around the forest, the great pines covering the mossy floor in shadow. The place was teeming with life, with squirrels dashing past our heads in the trees and birds chirping sweet songs in our ears. Aaron tried whistling back, to little response. "Guess my pitch is off," he chuckled. I gave it a go, and surprisingly, a couple of birds twittered back. Aaron feigned shock and snatched me up, before running with me down the trail, shouting, "You can have her, and she's mine." I was in complete stitches and laughed even harder when bewildered hikers walked past us, eyebrows raised and some giggling at our frantic display. At the end of the first half of the hike, we were rewarded with a scene of a beautiful lake. It was around there we stopped for a quick break. We sat on the side of the trail, watching the sun shimmering on the surface of the water. There were people all over it. Some were on canoes, some were windsurfing. Quite a lot of people were actually swimming. I could see their little heads bobbling around in the water. I think I took 20 pictures of the place. We stayed there a while before we set off back down the trail. The sun wouldn't go down for a while, so we took our time. I had completely forgotten about what happened last night. Aaron seemed a little bit on edge, but he was still grinning ear to ear. Sometimes I would see him look behind us. He disguised it as looking at me, but I knew of the real reason. The thought of that deer was still playing on his mind. In hindsight, I should have been more cautious too. Aaron lived here all of his childhood, so he knew what was normal around these woods. If Aaron was still anxious, I should have been too. The trail was still relatively busy. It was still early afternoon, so most people probably started hiking then. We'd walk past them, greeting fellow travelers. We could hear them behind us chatting about work or whose birthday it was that week. Normal things. We had less than half an hour left on our way back, and Aaron texted his parents to let them know. I looked up at the pines. The sun's rays tried their hardest to shine through the dense needles, showering the floor with little pinpricks of light. Then I heard a voice. It came from somewhere. I originally thought it came from in front of us. It could have been a hiker coming up the trail. The voice was faint, hardly above a whisper, although I would call it more of a groan. It was a rattling sound. I didn't think anything of it and waited to see who was walking up the trail. We went on, smiles still stretched across our faces. Unfortunately, no one ever walked past. I could see Aaron tense in his shoulders. He stuck his hand out and waggled it, prompting me to take it. I sped up and walked closer to him, holding his hand. He didn't look down at me, but he acknowledged my presence with a squeeze of my hand. I was going to turn and see if it was someone messing with us, but Aaron squeezed my hand again and looked at me with big eyes. He gave a soft shake of his head and gestured with his eyes to remain looking ahead. The voice grew louder the more we walked. It wasn't actually saying much, just a bunch of babbling. Sharp breaths punctuated every syllable. It kept changing its intonation too. One moment it would be as happy as a child, letting out stifled giggles. Other times it would be nervously whimpering. Sometimes it would be angry, like letting out growls and cut off yelps. It was almost as if it were speaking to us from all angles. Sometimes hisses would come from the left. Some gasps would come from the right. It wanted us to look at it. It got colder. The sun was still high in the sky, but a grim, cold wind had picked up, and I ended up having to put my hands in my pockets. We entered an area where there was debris on the ground, needles and sticks, that kind of thing. We walked a bit faster through this part, hoping to reach the exit as quickly as possible. We had to be less than 15 minutes away now, so we were close. Along with the crunching underfoot, the voice followed us. It was actually getting more vocal now, yipping and letting out whoops. Couldn't tell if they were happy screams or annoyed ones. It was close to us though. Horribly close. A rancid smell had started to permeate the air. Rotten meat with a hint of ammonia. Last time I smelt something like that, I went camping with my dad. Shot a buck right in front of me, and I can remember the sound of the bullets going past. He didn't even do anything with its corpse. He just slept by it for 3 nights, and that dreadful smell grew. I didn't sleep a wink. Instead, I watched it every night, imagining it jerking to life and taking its revenge. At the time, I wanted it to. It was one of the last times I ever went camping with him. Thankfully, old drunk. The crunches were clear, coming from all sides. I wanted to look, I really did. Aaron, however, kept a hand on my back and was almost pushing me along. So I kept looking forward. I wanted someone to come past us, a regular person, just so we had some company, to prove that this wasn't real. Then, we found out where the voice was. A loud snap of a twig echoed from right behind us. It caught us so off guard, we halted to a stop. Whatever was following us did as well. My heart hammered hard against my chest. It had been behind us the entire time. It had ceased its warbling and now was completely silent. There was no breathing. Nothing. I looked over at Aaron, pleading. He looked at me back, eyes locked on my face. His breathing went quiet and he mouthed, "Don't," to me. I returned my gaze to the road ahead and swallowed. I saw a marker on the left of me. We were close and could probably sprint to the exit. I was running through each of the signs and where they were when I heard a sound that sent an ice-cold shiver down my back. Aaron. The voice was so horribly familiar, yet so alien. It was my own voice, deep and gravelly. It was like whatever was behind us drawing out the sounds, testing its ability. Aaron bristled at the sound with a grimace. It sounded so much like me, except it was throaty and aged. It tried again with a higher pitch. It sounded more like me, but just not quite. The foul smell lingered, almost making me gag. It smelt so pungent and strong. I believe now that the smell was its breath. We didn't really smell anything like that before the voice came, and it must have been so close to us we had began to pick up on the scent. I don't know. My eyes made their way to Aaron's, who was looking back at me with a fear I had never seen before. He mouthed to me, "Run." That's all I needed. Before Aaron could react, I had already began sprinting down the trail, running as fast as my legs could take me. I jumped over the roots of the tree, trying not to fall. I heard Aaron behind me, his feet stomping against the ground. Soon, my legs were aching and my heart was desperately thudding, trying to keep up with the fact that I had sprinting for a while. I'm a desk jockey and do zero cardio, okay? I ran and ran and ran. I kept frantically looking for the markers. Hell, I was looking for the exit. Nothing but the endless rows of pine trees and the odd bushes dotted around. I had to stop. I didn't know where I was, and the sounds had gone quiet. Surely it would be okay for me to turn around. So I slowed to stop, legs wobbling from the adrenaline. I turned around and scanned the area. Aaron was nowhere to be seen. I had lost him. My stomach dropped to the floor. I spun around and watched. He was nowhere. How had I gone the wrong way? This trail had one road. I didn't change trail or reach any crossroads, but somehow I had managed to go further into the woods. It was impossible for me to not be at the opening. I took in huge gulps of air and started to look around and yell out for Aaron. My throat hurt so much. It was useless, really. My mind began to race. I had to figure out how to find the exit. I stood up and breathed in. Aaron? My blood froze. In my panic, I had totally neglected the fact I wasn't alone. The voice was ridiculously close to mine now, and the only thing holding it back from being an identical copy was the fact it hadn't nailed down my accent. I have a southern accent. This voice had something akin to someone with Valley Girl accent trying to do a southern one. It was a terrible impression, but it genuinely sounded like something I would come out with. Then, the next sound it made caused me to jump so far in the air, my knees cracked when I landed. It made the sound of a car horn honking. It was so ear-piercing and loud, my ears rang afterwards. It was short and punchy, like a little pip you'd do if the person in front hadn't moved when the lights go green. Now, I would have laughed at that. It's a car now, I would have thought. Instead, I thought, it's our car now? The warning beep I had given the deer that night just rang out in the middle of the woods. It did it again, louder this time. I think it was trying to make me scream or something because it kept making me jump when it did that. It kept on hopping from one place to another, searching for me. When I got closer, I backed up to one of the pines and held my breath. For all I knew, it could have been behind me. I just breathed. I kept my eyes forward like Aaron told me to, and breathed in, out, in, out. It's all I could do. The place went silent again, fear swirling in my stomach. I thought it found me. Then I felt something touch my shoulder. The fingers were long and they buried themselves into the flesh. Slowly, my eyes crept towards the hand, until eventually I followed the arm. It went up above me. When I saw what was there, I nearly screamed. There, crouched on one of the bigger branches of the pine, was Aaron with a finger to his lips. He held out his hand and braced himself against the branch, moving from a crouch to a seated position. I grabbed the hand hard, pushing myself upwards and towards the branch just below him. My right hand made it onto the branch, and I reached up with my left hand. Aaron pulled me upwards, careful to not fall himself. Just as I thought I'd made it safely onto the branch box, my left foot slipped and I smashed my knee against the bark. I bit back a yelp and bared my teeth. Oh my God, that hurt. I didn't even want to imagine looking down, so I weakly pulled my leg back up and made my way up the tree. The voice was further away now, the sound of Aaron's voice calling for me. It made us shudder. Eventually, we made it to a branch high enough to be safe and thick enough to hold us. We could see the ground through the gaps of the needles. I took a seat and looked at my knee. Blood made my blue leggings go a vile purple. Scratches in the fabric showed my ripped skin, as deep red trickled from the gashes. It stung like hell. Aaron placed a hand on my lower back and kissed my forehead. I fell into his touch and put my head into his neck. Wet dribbles of tears dripped into my scalp. Aaron was crying. He was always the more emotional one out of us. We established that quite early in our relationship when Aaron had held me, bawling over a nature documentary where a lion took down a gazelle. That was our second date. I can remember how I stared at him with disgust. A few years later, and I still do, but now I hug him back and laugh. Growing up in a poor household teaches you to control your emotions. One wrong look and shit hits the fan. I guess that's what drew me to Aaron in the first place. He did stuff like that, and nothing happened. His parents would chuckle instead of screaming at him. It was the nicest kind of weird I have ever experienced. The voice had rounded back to our tree, and it was back to mimicking me. Move. Once again, using what I told it last night to coax us out. It did this for about a minute, and then we saw a flash of a brown blur speed past the tree. The blur waddled backwards, reversing. Then I saw it. This deer wasn't a deer. We established this, but it didn't make the reveal any less horrifying. It didn't look at us and was looking deep into the forest. Then it heard something and faced our way. Its eyes weren't on the sides of its head. They were at the front, like a predator, like a human. They didn't look human. They were regular deer eyes, which I feel made it worse, small and beady. The sun was just setting, so the last bits of light reflected off the eyes. Once darkness began to hit, they changed. In the light of the sunset, I squinted and saw how it shook its head around violently. It looked up in an instant and faced away from the tree. Then it turned, and I saw how its eyes were blown out. Visibly, they had grown a lot, and now they were almost black. Better for searching. It spun around again and leapt off into the undergrowth. I heard a roaring sound before I heard a voice I didn't recognize. It was a little boy. "Aaron!" Aaron let out a gasp and slapped his hand over his mouth. Tears were in full flow now, and his hands were shaking. "Over here." Then a giggle, a childlike cough, and the worst sound of the lot, a young boy screaming bloody murder. Aaron clapped his hands over his ears and sucked in wet breaths. I wrapped my arms around him, stroking his flank. I could hear him muttering, "It's not Jake. It's not him," over and over. "Aaron!" It continued to wail. "Mom! Dad!" It was awful. Its voice kept on wavering back and forth between voices. It had seemingly perfected the Jake voice, as Aaron kept on choking on his breath whenever it copied the boy. It had pretty much decided that we were close because it stayed in the same position for the rest of the time we were up there, right next to the tree we were in. The sun had set fully then, so it was hard to see anything. My eyes adjusted, but it was still difficult. It went on and on, draining the pair of us. It got to the point where we were used to the screams and now realized that whatever was making the voices was doing it on a loop like a broken record. My voice, Aaron's, unknown boy, and then Jake. It was so mentally draining. I was fully considering jumping down and getting it over and done with. At least I would be dying or going missing with the one I loved, as dismal as that seems. I really couldn't think of anything else in the moment. It messed with me. As soon as I was going to close my eyes, a loud bang shot through the air. We heard a loud, warbling scream and the thundering sound of feet underneath. A gruff voice yelled our full names and ran around the tree. A couple more pairs of feet followed. This had to be the Rangers. "Up here," I called down to them. The flashlight beams shone around until they brought them up to our tree. Thankfully, it was the Rangers. We clambered down and were greeted with the sight of 3 park rangers and Aaron's dad, their faces ashy. I almost fell to my knees in joy and exhaustion. Aaron just caught me at the last second and choked out a sob. We had been found. Aaron carried me back to the entrance of the woods. The place looked so different in the dark. Aaron's mom was waiting for us with the other officers. She had been in floods of tears too, immediately running towards us. I had never felt so tired in my entire life. One of the officers took us to the hospital. I had splinters all in the gashes, and my muscles were exposed. Seriously gross stuff, but nothing was broken, so I wasn't worried. Everything happened so fast, you know? Aaron was fine, and that's all I cared about. It was our anniversary after all. It may surprise you to find out we headed home the very next day. We were quiet on the way back. I had so many questions to ask, but with one look at Aaron's face, I faced forward and closed my eyes. We were both too tired for talking. Once we got home, Aaron checked the house and collapsed on our bed. I stayed up and numbly watched a crappy comedy. No matter how much I watched, I could still hear the screams. Sometime I dropped off, don't know when, but when I woke up, Aaron was boiling some water, and the smell of coffee wafted its way to the living room. He walked in and handed me a cup, pressing a soft kiss to my temple with a warm smile. We sat in silence, dumbly watching the TV, when he sighed. "I'm sorry I took you there." I cocked my head. It wasn't your fault. Silence. I knew what was in there. I held the cup of coffee and stared at him. What? He sniffled and coughed. I remember everything. What? He turned to me, eyes watery. Seen it again. He shook his head. Everything came back. What did that even mean? I opened my mouth before Aaron spoke again. They told me his family moved away. His eyes were glassy now, swimming with memories. Jake's family? I was gentle, hoping to not set him off crying. He nodded and took a sip of his coffee. One day he was there, the next he wasn't. Now you know why? He nodded again, morosely. We sat there for a while. We were camping for our birthday. We had the same birthday. Aaron looked up, recounting the events like they happened yesterday. It was our 12th. I let him speak. We were so excited, Elle. His eyes fluttered. Then we heard it. The deer? Yeah, the deer. He let out a cruel laugh. If only. What happened? He took another sip before he started up again. It called to us in our voices, saying stuff like over here and our names. Aaron placed the cup on the table. We thought it was funny. I get that. You guys were kids. Yeah, well, we found it so funny, we asked you to come out and wish us a happy birthday. And? I have never seen something more horrible in my entire life. He shook slightly, face gradually going pale. We screamed. So, it didn't look like a deer, or it did, and we just didn't see its real form? We ran away, or I did? It's hard to remember. He wet his lips. I can remember hearing Jake fall, and I turned to look at him. I reached over and rubbed his arm when he became emotional. He brought a hand up to his lips and stared at a corner of the room. I ran over and tried to pull him up. He gasped, and it just batted me away like a fly. His eyes were downcast. There was so much blood. He looked at me to respond, but I didn't and let him speak. It dragged him away, and I ran so far, ended up climbing a tree and camping there for a while. How long? He shrugged. All I know was that I sat there until the sun went down and the noises stopped. Then I ran home. You tell your folks? He nodded sheepishly. They told the police, they went and checked it out, found blood and blamed it on a cougar. He forced out a laugh. Then it spoke to me. It spoke to you? I was leaned forward in my seat now. Yes, when I was about to drift off to sleep. He lowered his voice to a whisper. I'll come back to you. Then you can join them. I swallowed it thickly. Why hadn't it come earlier for him? Was he trying to ripen him up? It just made me feel sick. Did you see it again? No. I stayed out of the woods, and it didn't bother me anymore. The air was thick, hard to breathe. It must have used this hike as a chance to take him. I could have saved him. You were a kid, Aaron. So fucking what, he snapped at me. I could have saved him. Could you? He paused and watched me intently. His eyes bounced from one side to the next, seemingly going through every possible outcome. With a furrow of his brow, I guess he realized that he couldn't have done anything. He sat back in his seat on the sofa. His eyes were still cloudy, clearly still thinking. I leaned over and rested my head on his shoulder, holding his arm. Strange what the mind hides from you, huh? I didn't say anything. I mean, what can you say to that? We tried to get on with our lives. I went back to work, so did Aaron. We acted like we had the best anniversary of our lives, because what else could we do? Tell my manager that we had some kind of monster deer chase us down in the middle of the woods and we kept hearing it mimicking us and Aaron's dead childhood friend? See how ridiculous that sounds? So we put on our happy faces. It was harder for Aaron, obviously. He's looking to see a therapist. He's also talking with the police from his hometown over Jake's disappearance. Jake's parents are yet to say anything. Can't imagine what they're going through. He told me he couldn't live with himself if he stayed quiet. I try to look more on the positive side nowadays. I used to be very cynical, and I blame my upbringing for that. When I met Aaron, stuff changed. He was just so enthusiastic about life. Car broke down in the rain. Well, at least we have shelter. Lost your wallet? Well, we can always get a new one. You feel guilty for cutting contact with your parents? You had to do that for your safety. Always, he's been able to turn bad situations on their head and find the silver lining in the cloud, even if it's barely visible. He brought out that optimistic part of me that I hid for so long. He helped me out of that horrible pit and made me see the light in life again. Since that day, I've been seeing less and less of that happy-go-lucky guy. I'm not complaining at all, by the way, please know that. I'd be more disturbed if he just went on with life like nothing happened. But I feel like I've been taking him for granted. I want to help him through this. He helped me, so I'm going to help him too. He assures me I don't need to, but I will anyway. I love him. And if that means I wait on every hand and foot for him, I'll fucking do it. I thought we were in the clear after we left that place. Turns out I was wrong. This happened earlier today, and I'm still shook up writing this. I was at home after work, and I went upstairs to go change. It looked like Aaron had just left before my arrival because he left the bathroom light on. I was about to flip the switch when I saw something. It was a bit hard to see because of the frosted glass, but there was something outside. It was a dark, fragmented blob. I was tempted to open the window to see what it was. I mean, it could have been a piece of clothing that had came into the backyard. Suddenly, a shiver ran down my spine and I writhed in my spot. I halted and watched the blob. It was completely still, which put doubt on my clothing theory. It was quite windy outside, so the clothing would have wafted around or flown off. This thing stayed deathly still. It had 4 little stumps under it like table legs. Maybe they were legs. Cats often came into our yard, with the next door neighbor having 2 of them. It looked bigger than a cat, though. I blamed the frosted glass for the distortion, but that theory didn't last long either. The thing began to move. It lifted each of the stumps one by one, which now solidified my belief that this was indeed an animal, and then crouched down. Then, much to my horror, the thing lifted itself up onto 2 legs, body rising high into the air. It stood straight up, the stumps now longer. What the hell? It didn't wobble or fall, but instead went stiff as a board and raised its fifth stump, which I figured out was its neck. So this thing was either staring away from me or directly at me. It was hard to see, but I think it was looking at me. Then an awful thought came to my mind. It couldn't be that deer. It couldn't. The thing and I were just staring at each other, and I seriously hoped that it couldn't see me. Then I realized something. I had the bathroom light on, and I was standing at the window. It could definitely see me. Thoughts of the screaming and hollering from that night played over and over in my mind. Had it followed us home? My body tensed up and refused to breathe. I had gone very much into prey mode, and I was now trying my best to hide myself, which, let's be honest, isn't going to go down well when you're stood under a spotlight. I don't know how long I stayed there. After a while, the thing gave up, and whilst still on its hind legs, it staggered off into the bush behind the house. I cried. I cried so hard. I ended up squeezed into the corner of the bathroom, shaking like a leaf with tears running down my cheeks. I can't remember the last time I cried like that. It must have been when I first moved in with Aaron, and that was a long time ago. After this release of pent-up emotion, I pulled myself together and called Aaron. I gushed, spilling everything to him. I thought we'd lost connection because he was so quiet. He eventually told me he'd be home soon and that I should start to pack a bag. I didn't have any time to respond before he hung up, and I was left baffled. When he came home, he came into our bedroom and started piling clothes into his duffel bag. "Where are we going?" I asked, staring at my boyfriend in surprise. He had never been this serious before. "I'll tell you in the car." He didn't even bother looking away from his bag. "Babe, what's going on?" "Shh." He shushed me sharply. "I'll tell you in the car." I went back to folding my clothes and chucking spare glances at him. His face was completely blank and his hands were working on autopilot. We left the house that evening, as soon as we packed. Is it bad to say that Aaron scared me a little? I had never seen this part of him at all. It was almost like he was angry. We got settled in the car and he pulled out of the driveway. "Are you going to tell me where we're going now?" He stayed quiet and faced the road. "Aaron." I was getting irritated now. He pursed his lips and flicked his eyes over to the rearview mirror. "Aaron, will you answer me?" "Shut up," he hissed, eyes bobbing from the rear view to the windshield and back again. I sat there speechless. That was the first time he had told me to shut up and meant it. There wasn't any venom behind the words, and I didn't know what to make of it. So I did what I'd learned to do when people were pissed off. I stayed quiet and, much to my shame, I disassociated. He was stressed and I was making things harder. I think I must have disassociated for about an hour before I felt Aaron squeezing my shoulder. We were outside a dive bar. I had no idea where we were. "You okay, sweet?" He was rubbing into the meat of my shoulder, face full of concern. About an hour of time lost. I heard him call my name and I woke up from that familiar trance. Where are we? It was the only thing I was thinking about. Let's get inside first, yeah? Something in me just snapped. What was this? No, I bit. You tell me right now, Aaron. He threw his head back against the headrest inside. "Can we just get inside, Elle?" "Aaron, please." I stared right at him. "I'm scared." It was rare for me to say that out loud. Aaron knew that. He quickly looked around all the car, peeking in the windows before he turned to me. He beckoned me close to him, and I obeyed. Then he whispered something in my ear. "It might still hear us." I had a full-body shiver and made my stomach fill with dread. "So we need other people to block out conversation?" I whispered back. He nodded. I understood, even if it sounded bizarre. We grabbed a bite to eat and sat in the middle of the booths, multiple families chatting beside us. Finally, we could talk. That leads me to now. I'm sitting in the car. Aaron's driving. In the span of a week, my life has been turned upside down. Life was good. It was good. I was with the man I loved and away from all the shit in my life. My parents were out of my social circle, and Aaron's family took their place. My life was good. Now we're running back to his hometown. It sounds stupid. However, there are a couple of reasons for this. Number one, home isn't safe anymore. That thing knows where we live. Number two, we could vacate to somewhere far off, but money is not good at the moment, and even then, that thing could follow us. We have no idea where this thing can go. Finally, 3. Aaron told his parents and they believed us, mainly because his dad saw the deer. They know someone who can help us. Hopefully, that makes more sense as to why we've decided to head back. We're going to stay to the highways, no back roads unless we have to. Hopefully, that thing either stays away, or if it follows us, it gets ran over by a truck. It probably wouldn't kill it, but it would slow down. I hope. I'm going to finish this post here. Aaron and I are in the car now, and we're close to the highway. I just hope we get there safely. Wish us luck. And this is the last time we have ever heard from the OP, so hopefully the OP and the OP's husband are alive and safe and away from that monster. I asked my best friend to tell me the scariest thing that had ever happened to him. Written by Sapphire Lion 15. Nate and I were at his parents' cabin in Ontario to celebrate the start of summer. We'd both taken a week off of work and planned a 4-day vacation of nothing but hiking, biking, canoeing, and enjoying a break from our hectic lives in the city. I honestly don't remember much of the vacation itself. It was a lot of fun, sure, but we did so much of the same stuff that it's all sort of a blur. Whenever I think of that trip, the only thing that I can remember is that conversation. Probably because I want so desperately to forget it. We'd finished a simple but tasty dinner of hot dogs and potato chips. We both wanted beers, but we'd blown through what we brought with us. It was raining, with occasional thunderclaps. I thought it was peaceful. We were sitting in front of a roaring fireplace, working through a pot of coffee. It was dark and fairly late, but neither of us felt like going to bed, probably because of the coffee, so we ended up just talking. The first few minutes of our conversation were nothing noteworthy, just small talk. Somehow, I really have no idea how, the conversation turned to some of the weird animals we'd seen during the trip. Nate brought up how, while we'd been hiking the day before, a snake had slithered across the trail, most likely startled by us. I had let out a very unmanly scream and jumped a foot in the air. I chuckled and explained that I was afraid of snakes because when I was 9, my brother's pet boa constrictor escaped its terrarium, made its way out of his bedroom, and ate my pet hamster. My parents got rid of the boa and made my brother apologize to me. But I'd been afraid of the reptiles ever since. I said, without exaggeration, that walking in on that creature swallowing my still kicking hamster was the scariest thing I ever saw. Nate looked sympathetic and handed me a cookie from the package we'd been snacking on. We were silent for a minute, listening to the rain and fire, when I asked the question, "What's the scariest thing that ever happened to you?" Nate seemed to freeze. I wondered for a moment if he hadn't heard me. Then I noticed that his coffee cup was violently shaking. The thankfully lukewarm at that point coffee had spilled all over his hands and onto the blanket in his lap. "Nate?" The sound of my voice brought him back to reality. He sucked in a quick breath and noticed that his hand and blanket were soaked in coffee. He frowned and got up, swearing at the spilled coffee. "I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry. I didn't know you'd, freeze up like that. You don't have to tell me if you don't. No." He was so blunt that it surprised me. He'd gotten rid of the ruined blanket. It was a cheap one anyway. Wiped off his hand and refilled his coffee cup. He came back and sat in his chair facing me. We'd been friends for years, but I'd never seen him look so grave. It's been years since I thought of it. The scariest thing that ever happened to me? As much as I want to, though, I'll never forget it. Do you want to talk about it? No, but I will. I need to. Just remember something for me. I'm not making this up. I couldn't if I tried. This isn't some campfire ghost story that happened to my brother's friend's sister's mailman or anything like this. I'm not making this up, okay? I nodded. Despite his warnings, my interest had tripled. He sighed and took a long sip from his coffee. He turned and faced the fire. He didn't look at me once through the story. I asked questions and he answered every one, but he never turned away from the fire. I was 17 and feeling like I was the king of the world. I just paid for, with my parents' help, a used but nice red pickup truck. One of the prettiest girls in my school was my girlfriend. I had just gotten a letter of acceptance to my dad's alma mater. I thought things couldn't get better. To celebrate, Sabrina, my girlfriend, our friend, AJ, and a lot of our friends threw a party. I don't really remember it, but it's where I first heard about the old Raindrop Inn. The Raindrop Inn? Yeah, it was some old hotel back in the 1920s or 1930s. No one knew the full story, but rumor had it that the town founder had built the hotel for his wife. That it had been her dream to live in a hotel. On the opening night, however, the founder found his wife in their bedroom, fooling around with a bellboy. She screamed when she saw her husband, and apparently she opened the balcony door and committed S-word. The founder never set foot in the hotel again and later sold it to the highest bidder. It was open for another 20 years. During that time, 18 people died in it. Most of them committed S-word via the balcony, just like the founder's wife. A maid who saw one of them jump says that the guest screamed, "Leave me alone," into the bedroom before she committed S-word. When the maid checked, there was no one in the bedroom. What about the other guests? the ones that didn't commit S-word. Only 5 of the dead guests didn't. I don't remember the other 2, but there was a couple that were found tied together in a full bathtub, fully clothed, with a plugged-in TV in there with them. The other was a young boy who just disappeared. His mother told the police that she tucked her son into bed and heard some terrible squealing noise after she shut the door. She described it as a sort of squeal of delight, and it wasn't from her son. She ran back in, and he was gone. No body, no blood, nothing. Apparently, that was the last straw. The owner was sick of bad publicity and closed the place down. I learned all of this the night of that party. I didn't believe it and told the guys that they told a nice ghost story. They got defensive and told me to go see it for myself if I didn't believe them. Then they told me where to find it. Everyone knew that it was just inside the forest behind the high school. I laughed it off and we continued to party. But I kept that story in my mind. The next night, Sabrina was over at my house. We were trying to watch a movie, but my little brother Pete wouldn't leave us alone. He kept saying that it was his turn for the TV, that he was going to tell Mom if we didn't hand over the remote. Do you have a little brother? I nodded. Then you probably know how I felt. I finally threw the remote down on the couch and went onto the porch with Sabrina. We were talking. She was suggesting we go to her house to watch the movie. I forget what exactly we were talking about. Anyway, my mom walks out of the house and tells me that she needs to run out for a few hours. She was a vet, and some asshole, her words, not mine, had run over a dog. She told me I was in charge and asked Sabrina if she wanted a ride home. She said no, that we were going to finish our movie. Mom told me she'd be home by 1 a.m., reminded me to watch Pete, and left. I told Sabrina that if Pete was going to be a pain and hog the TV all night, then I didn't really want to stay home. It was a Friday night, not to mention the start of summer. I told her that we should do something exciting, something cool. She asked me what I wanted to do. At that point, it was 8 at night, and a few places were closed. I thought for a second before I remembered the night before. I asked her if she had heard about the Rain Drop Inn. Surprisingly, she hadn't. I told her what the guys had told me the night before. She listened, but asked when I was done why I brought it up. I told her that I wanted to go see it. She laughed at me. Very funny. I told her I was serious. If it was as close as the guys at the party had said, then we could be there and back before my mom got home. She was quiet for a second, then started to look excited. She'd always had a bit of a fascination with urban legends, and I knew that it wouldn't take much convincing to get her to go to the old hotel. But then her face fell again. You have to watch your brother. Remember? There's no way that he wouldn't tell your mom. I cursed under my breath. She was right. If Pete knew what we were doing, he'd want to come. The kid had read every Goosebumps book twice and loved scary stuff. If he came, he'd ruin the fun. And if we left, he'd tell Mom. Then I had an idea. When I was a kid, my dad got Pete and I into collecting these little Hot Wheels cars. I kept up my collection even in my teens and had about 300 by that night. Pete had less than half of that, and he was seriously jealous of my collection. I'd even caught him in my room once or twice trying to steal the more impressive models. I told Sabrina that I knew what to do and went inside. Pete had turned the TV to one of those kids' channels and got mad when I paused it. But he heard me out. I told him that I would give him 50 of the cars from my collection. His choice. if he didn't tell Mom about Sabrina and I going out for a while. He agreed, but asked where we were going. Just some place some friends at school told me about. He seemed suspicious, but nodded. He then turned back to the TV and pulled his favorite red baseball cap down to his eyebrows, signaling that the conversation was over. I went up to my room to grab a flashlight and a jacket. When I came downstairs, the TV was off and Pete was gone. I assumed that he'd gone to his room and went back to the porch. Sabrina was annoyed that I'd taken so long, but then smiled and said she wanted to go. I turned towards my truck and was halfway to the driveway when Sabrina told me to turn around. I had left the front door open. I pulled my key from my pocket, shut the door, and locked it. But I was confused. I was sure I'd locked the door on my way out the first time. Hadn't I? I shook it off and went to the car with Sabrina. It was barely 5 minutes from our house to the high school, but we wasted 10 driving around, looking for the old, unkempt road that allegedly led to the raindrop. Finally, I parked my truck and we both got out. I turned on the flashlight and we walked out. Finally, Sabrina spotted it. You wouldn't notice it from a distance, as a lot of grass had grown between the cracks, but there was a lot of really broken asphalt that made a trail leading into the woods. We looked at each other and grinned. We were about to start when I heard a sound like a car door slamming. We both turned to my truck, but there was nothing there. I remembered then that I hadn't locked it, and pressed the button on my key fob. Sabrina, more eager now than ever, grabbed my upper arm and pulled me down the path. We walked for maybe 20 minutes before we found it. We both sort of froze when it came into view. I don't think either of us had completely believed that it was real, but there it was. It looked like it had once been nice. It was 3 stories tall. It must have been really well built if it was still standing after 70 years. 50 of them with no maintenance. Still, the age showed. The building was being strangled by kudzu, with every window being broken or having no glass at all. The original color of the walls was impossible to guess, as the wind, rain, and time had turned them an earthy brown. The roof was missing multiple tiles. There were massive cracks in the walls, and the front porch was sagging. To top it all off, we clearly hadn't been the first people to visit the place. Graffiti, written in neon orange spray paint, had been sprayed on several blank spots on the walls. Keep out, run, stay away, danger. Stuff like that was written whenever the artist could find space. We should have gone home right then and there. I was scared out of my mind, and judging by how tightly she was holding my hand, Sabrina was too. But we still wanted to go in. Maybe I was being stupid that night. Maybe I wanted to look tough in front of my girlfriend. I don't know, but we went in. The hotel was even creepier inside. At first glance, I thought it looked more like an old barn than an old hotel. Then, as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I saw that, yes, it had been a hotel. There was the front desk, covered in mouse turds. There was the lobby bell, so rusty that it would never ring again. The half-eaten couch, lopsided love seat, and upside-down chair had been the sitting area in the lobby. There was even a luggage cart buried under so many dusty cobwebs that it looked like a sheer white curtain had been draped over it. From holes in the ceiling, moonlight illuminated the room. Well, this is inviting, Sabrina whispered. You scared? I whispered back, hoping she would say yes so that we could leave. No, she responded, still whispering. I knew she was lying. You don't bury your fingernails into someone's shoulder if you're relaxed. Are you scared? No, I lied. Why are we whispering? I don't know, she said, speaking normally. Do you want to try and go upstairs? I did not. What I wanted was to get out of there, make a beeline for the truck, go home and wrestle the TV remote from Pete, but I didn't want my girlfriend to think I was a wimp. So I tried to look brave and nodded. The stairs were in surprisingly good shape, considering the state of the rest of the hotel. We had to dodge cobwebs, which hung from the ceiling of the stairwell like party streamers, but we didn't have trouble getting to the next floor. That's when things got really creepy. The first thing we saw when we got to the hotel's second floor was a lump in the middle of the floor. Sabrina glanced at me, and I walked over to the lump. I only took one look before jumping back in disgust. The lump was a rabbit, or it had been. It was dead, and I didn't have to be a doctor to see what had killed it. There was a hole in its chest the size of my fist. From the 2-second glance I took, I could see that the rabbit's organs were all gone. There wasn't even blood. The rabbit was nothing more than literal skin and bones. I did not tell Sabrina this. I just said that the rabbit had been killed by something and that we should probably go. She was clearly freaked out by the rabbit, even if she didn't know how bad it was mutilated. We might have left right then if we hadn't heard something. Footsteps. We both froze and slowly turned to look at the door to the stairwell. Someone was coming up the stairs. I threw open the first door I saw. The lock was so old that it fell off when I opened the door. I sort of hugged Sabrina to me and pulled her into the room. I closed the door as quietly as I could, hoping that whatever was coming up the stairs hadn't hurt us in the hall. We both heard the door to the stairwell open. We looked at each other and both put our fingers over our lips. I've never seen Sabrina's eyes so wide, and I have a feeling mine looked the same. We listened closely as the thing that had walked up the stairs began to walk slowly down the hall. I heard it stop at what must have been the rabbit's corpse. At that point, I realized that I heard a new noise. There were voices coming from the hallway. No, not the hallway. Those voices were coming from all over the floor. I wrapped my arms around Sabrina as we listened. From somewhere there came an inhuman squeal of delight, followed by the scream of a small child. From a bathroom somewhere up the hall, there was begging and screaming, followed by a violent splash and the unmistakable sound of electricity. A woman screamed, "Leave me alone," followed by a window shattering and a distant, heavy thud. My already hammering heart rate accelerated when I realized what I was listening to. I remembered the story from the party, how a child had disappeared, a couple had been electrocuted, a woman had committed S-word. We'd just listened to those people die. Those sounds finally stopped, followed by what sounded like a sharp draw of breath from the hallway. I noticed then that the room was cold, eerily cold, especially for a night in late May, and it was quickly getting colder. Like the source of the chill was moving up the hall. There was a sudden scream. I was so rattled that I screamed. So did Sabrina. At that moment, instincts took over. I forgot about looking cool and just wanted out of there. I grabbed Sabrina's hand and charged through the door like a fullback. It was so old that I actually knocked it off its hinges as I ran. I caught a glimpse of some shapeless white thing. I didn't look any longer than that, and charged for the door to the stairwell. Considering how fast I was running, I'm amazed that neither of us hurt ourselves as he rocketed downstairs. Despite my panic, I noticed something in the lobby I hadn't before. There was a pile in the corner. A pile of limp, furry bodies. They all had holes in them. At that point, I didn't want to see any more. Still holding Sabrina's hand, I sprinted across the lobby, flew out the front door and tripped on the porch. We both landed face down on the forest floor. I didn't know or care if I was hurt. I immediately got up, clawing at the dirt to get friction. Sabrina was a few steps ahead of me, calling at me to keep running, to not look back. Screams were pouring from the hotel windows. Screams of pain and terror. That was all the incentive I needed to pick up my pace. I ran so fast that night that I think I broke a few Olympic records. The second we saw the truck, we both jumped in. I twisted the key and stomped on the gas. My truck broke the speed limit 3 times over as we made a break for my house. When the school was out of view, I slowed down and pulled over to the side of the road. We took a moment to catch our breath. Sabrina was crying. She'd been so scared. Honestly, I was too. Nothing in my life had prepared me for that. I wondered how close we'd come to disappearing or dying that night. We stayed in my truck for a while, trying to get a hold of ourselves and processing what had happened. Finally, we both felt stable enough to go back to my house. At that point, it was midnight, and my mom would be home in an hour. I expected Pete to still be parked in front of the TV, and I remembered that I still needed to give him the cars he wanted. At that moment, I was ready to give him the full collection. After that night, toy cars didn't seem important anymore. Sabrina went in first, while I parked the car. I went in and saw she wasn't there. I heard her upstairs and went to make us a snack. I just pulled out the chips and salsa when I heard her run down the stairs. I turned around with the chip platter, smiling. She must have been hungry. Then I looked at her face. That's when I saw how scared she was. She looked me in the eyes and practically shouted, "Where's your brother?" Tears started streaming down his face. Pete had hidden in the back of my truck. He'd overheard what I said on the porch about the hotel, and he'd gone with us. He opened the front door, he slammed my truck door. He was making the footsteps we heard on the stairs, and he was the one who screamed. I left him there. For a few minutes, he was silent. I sat back, stunned. I didn't know what to say. Finally, he spoke again. A week later, I went back to that hotel. I don't know why, closure maybe. As I drove up, I saw it on the porch. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want it to be there, but it was. Pete's red baseball cap. He took a deep breath and finally looked at me again. And that is the scariest thing that ever happened to me. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. The fire was still blazing, and the rain was still hammering down. But it wasn't peaceful anymore. My smart home says my door opened at 2:15 a.m., written by Hokons. I didn't always live alone. After Paul and I separated, I kept the house. A modest 4-bedroom, mortgage paid off. 3 months on and half his furniture was still piled in the living room, waiting for him to collect. How many times do I have to tell you? He'd yell over the phone, "I'll be back, you can count on that. And God help me if there's so much as a scratch." I changed the locks the next morning. There was a lot I didn't know about Paul. This was the first time I'd truly lived alone. No Paul, no flatmate, just me and 3 empty bedrooms. Even in a gated neighborhood, break-ins happened. I'd chewed my nails down to stubs over it. I researched smart home technology. If I was doing this, I was going all the way. Smart bulbs, door sensors, automated security. I found a service that met all my needs and ordered with express delivery. It was all tied to one app that logged everything. Every light switched on, every door opened, logged. There was a shortage of security cameras. The packages would arrive within 4 to 6 weeks, they said. That was 2 months ago. I'd have emailed the courier for an update, but I forgot all about it once I started skimming the logs. I'd been having a problem. Lights would switch on in random rooms. The manual warned it might, but this was consistent. Daily. I'd be eating a salad in the living room and the gap under the laundry door would light up. The laundry leads to a back door. A rat, possibly. Something had gotten in and was triggering the sensors. Then it started happening more often. The laundry, the garage, even the living room while I was cooking in the kitchen. I opened the app to check the logs. Bedroom door. Opened. 2:14 a.m. I stared at it for a long time. My bedroom was an ensuite. I don't leave the room at night. Bedroom door. Closed. 5:58 a.m. Just before my alarm goes off. False positives. That's all they were. Same as the lights. I locked the bedroom door and called my lawyer, Greg Duggins. Are you sure he's still in San Francisco? I asked. Yes, positive, said Duggins. He'll be in the States for another week. Okay, I said, if you say so. I set the phone down on the bedside table and looked at the door. San Francisco. Right. I turned the handle once to make sure it was locked. I returned to the app and scrolled further down the logs. Laundry door, open, 11 p.m. Laundry light, 11:01 p.m. Entryway light, 11:03 p.m. Hallway light, 11:03 p.m. Second floor hallway light, 11:04 p.m. From then until my bedroom door opened at 2:14 a.m., nothing. I called the cops to report a break-in. While I waited, I kept looking at the timeline. What were they doing on the landing all that time? None of the rooms had their lights triggered. The only place to hide was the linen closet, but there was no space for anything other than a small critter. A rat, like I thought. I chewed my lip and opened the bedroom door. The linen closet was within an arm's reach. I reached for the handle. Knock, knock, knock. Jesus. I let go of the handle and rushed downstairs to let the police in. Afternoon, ma'am. We're responding to a call for a break-in. Yes, come in. I showed them the logs. They agreed it was strange. Just me. New locks, I said. Well, there's no sign of forced entry, but there are a few scratch marks around the keyhole. If you've got a new lock, it's not uncommon to scratch the keyhole while your muscle memory adjusts. But it's possible someone broke in, right? Well, the door was locked from the inside when we got here, so I doubt it, he said, chewing at his overgrown mustache. Show us the rooms and we'll have a look over. Ease your mind. I showed them all the rooms on the first floor and the bedrooms on the second floor. There wasn't much for them to do. They noted the break-in and advised me to follow up on getting those cameras installed. I dusted Paul's junk and made dinner. I didn't eat much, just poked at my food, scrolling through my contacts. I had 4 friends who would pack an overnight bag and be here within an hour, but I hadn't spoken with any of them since the divorce. They'd bring up Paul, and all I wanted to was to forget about him and all his shit he kept promising to pick up. I locked up and went to bed. After an hour of flipping my pillow to the cool side, I gave up and checked the logs. No new alerts. Part of me wished I had never installed the app. I would have been sound asleep by now. To calm myself down, I opened Google and started browsing apartments in my area. Units, suites, something with a lobby and a night guard. Light flashed under my bedroom door. A notification blipped on my phone. Second floor hallway light. 10:58 p.m. I gripped the bed sheets. Hello? The light switched off. For a second, I thought I'd seen two shadows, spaced about a shoe length apart. I refreshed the page. No new logs. No other lights triggered. I got out of bed and pressed my ear against the door. Nothing. I used the app to turn on the hallway lights and looked under the gap. The shadows were gone. No one is there, I told myself. If someone were there, they'd be in the hallway. I'd see their feet, or they'd have gone to another room, which would have triggered the light. The only other area on the second floor was the linen closet, in arm's reach from my door. Did I ever check it? I gripped the bedroom door handle. Open, reach, grab, open. I cracked open the bedroom door. Bzzz. Fuck. I slammed it shut. Bedroom door opened 11:05 p.m. Idiot. I opened the bedroom door and peered through the crack. Floorboards, wall, no shadows. I opened it further, looking at the linen closet. Grab open, that's all. Then I can go to bed. I gripped the handle. I've got a gun, and I will shoot. I lied. No answer. I'd been hoping there would be one, then I wouldn't have to open the door. All right, it's your funeral. I ripped open the closet door. Sheets, blankets, a vacuum cleaner. A gap next to the vacuum that hadn't been there before. I looked closer. Something wet pooled in the corner. I sniffed the air. Ammonia. Urine. Light beamed up the staircase. Hallway light, 11:07 p.m. A shadow moved down it. Quick steps echoed off the walls. Entryway light, 11:07 p.m. Laundry light, 11:08 p.m. Laundry door open, 11:08 p.m. My heart was in my throat. I moved toward the noise, as if I'd convinced myself I really did have a gun. I stopped at the landing. Hey, I saw you. I went down. All the lights were still on. Paul's furniture cast long shadows across the living room. The shade on his lamp turned slowly. Both laundry doors were open. I could see through to the side yard. They'd left. I stood in the laundry doorway and looked out at the side yard. My phone burned in my hand. I'd been squeezing it. No way of knowing who was in my home. I moved to close the door. The smell hit me again. Stronger. I looked back towards the stairs to the linen closet, right outside my bedroom. I hadn't checked it earlier. I had my hand on the handle. I thought about the hours where nothing had triggered. The time I spent lying in bed. The time they spent crouched in the linen closet, right outside my door. Listening. Waiting for me to go to sleep.